Okay, welcome everyone to our Strange New World Season 1 recap. And I'm just happy we're here talking about this because I think all of us have been sort of very ecstatically glad about this Star Trek series in a way that, not to say that any others have underperformed, but just in a way that made every Star Trek fan happy. So yeah, this is us going to be talking about the highs, the lows, the good points, the bad points, the expectations, and everything else. But I want to throw one out for you because we've been rating them as we go along. We've been rating each episode, and rather us doing kind of like a big, oh, you got 7 for this, 9 for that, your aggregate score was 9.75. No. What did you guys out of 10 rate the season as a whole?
As a whole.
As a whole.
Wow, that is
So, I feel like this is a season where I can answer with a good authority and say the highs were extremely high. Like there are like episodes in here that I would gladly rewatch as many millions of times as any TNG DS9 like beloved episode. There are some episodes that I did not like. I personally didn't hate them. I didn't think they were badly made. I thought there were wrong choices made every now and then, but nothing was offensive to me. I was just like, that is not the choice I would have made, and I kind of wish you'd gone in a different direction. Mostly because it leaves certain storytelling things, but we'll get into that. For me, I would probably have to give this. I don't know, man. I gotta be honest. It's like a 9 out of 10 season for me. There's a few misses in here. But overall, what a fucking strong season.
Yeah, I am getting a child in my lap immediately. We started this. Yeah, okay, so when I gave my first rating to the first episode that I did for this show, I didn't want to, like I said, I didn't want to give like a 9 or a 10 right away because I wanted to give the show a chance to improve on itself, and I wanted to kind of give myself some wiggle room to, see how it was going to play out before I, decided for myself what the best one was going to be. And that worked out. So I kind of want to do the same thing for the season as a whole. And it might sound a little lower than you would think, but I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 for a season. Now, for season 1 of a Star Trek series, that is phenomenal. Just
are there any other series
to other...
you could give that rating to?
Well, the only thing is, like, people kind of tend to forget that season 1 of TOS was probably its strongest season.
Yeah, easily, I'd say. Yeah. Like, season 2 has some really strong episodes, but there's a little bit of the creeping rot because of the various infighting at Desilu and stuff like that, and with the whole Roddenberry drama. And then season 3 speaks for itself.
Yeah. The quality goes so far up and down with TOS, it's hard to pin that on. But yeah, I would say an 8 with the thought that could they do better? Can they do better? Will they do better? And I'm hoping the answer is yes.
So it's a 9 for me, partly because the things that I didn't like about it were one was a personal thing. We'll talk about Hammer. That was the one thing that gets it the point docked, but it was still executed brilliantly. And probably my most disappointing episode was an average episode. Like, it wasn't objectively bad. It was just But I can't think of any other season of Star Trek which has had, because pretty much every season, correct me if I'm wrong here, has had pretty much as high episodes as average episodes, and it's had some dog crap episodes. Just trying to think of any season that's had maybe just an average baseline.
Maybe like a season. Well, even
season
like
6
of
DS9 is pretty good.
Yeah. Well, and it's like season 4 or 5 TNG would have some weird comedy episode throw in that just doesn't hold up to the rest of it. So I mean, as far as just across the board,
the general like ceiling of quality is pretty high. It's, there are seasons that I think are better, but the floor is so much higher than anything else. Like, in fact, that was the other question I was going to ask. Is so if this is, and I think we have to say, like, with the proviso of TOS season 1, that's like, it's, as you say, the quality on that is so high and so iconic. If this is the best, say, 1987 to present, Star Trek Season 1, what is the nearest contender?
Lower Decks, I would say. If
Yeah?
we're going to count that in the running, I mean, I
Yeah.
know it's a comedy spin-off, more
It's a different
leaning, it
animal.
leans more on the jokes than rather than the serious Trek aesthetic, and is more a homage, although perfectly canon. I feel, Lower Decks Season 1 is probably the top contender.
This is something that I say a little reluctantly, just because it's not my favorite Star Trek series, but probably Voyager.
Interesting.
And that sounds weird to say, but I'll say it with the caveat that it laid down a lot of threads and ideas about where you would think the show was going to go, given the setup, that it just utterly does not follow up on. And that's what makes it look worse in retrospect.
That's true.
Just watching season 1, just the idea of the limited resources and the, let's do everything we can to get home, and Maquis versus Starfleet on the same ship, and let's everybody band together because we're all kind of stranded on this thing. And then just so many of those threads just go off to die. And so, but as they were established, as they were laid out, they were actually pretty good. They just didn't pay them off.
You're not wrong. It's like Voyager does very much have two different eras. There's sort of season 1 to season 3, which is sort of your, like, it was one part of the Delta Quadrant, and then there's 4 to 7, and this doesn't. It also coincidentally has the case of, hey, who's your other cast member? Is it Kess or is it 7 of 9? That determines what era and the general level of quality.
Garrett Wang is too handsome. We can't kill him off.
Couldn't possibly.
No, literally, that was the reason they were going to kill Garrett Wang off, or Harry Kim off, and then Garrett Wang won like most handsome performer in some teen magazine. So they're like, oh, we can't get rid of him.
He's got the teen heartthrob audience.
Absolutely.
My contender would be Discovery Season 1. I think it ends quite badly. Like, I think the resolution with the Klingons is not handled particularly well. There are some definite, like, shortfalls. But I think as a piece of drama, and conversely to Voyager, a lot of what is laid down in Season 1 is still present in Season 3. I imagine in Season 4, it is still informing those characters. And there are characters in that season who I would love to see show up in Strange New Worlds, because I thought they had a strong enough introduction that I'm like, yeah, bring them back. Like, I don't know if people have been keeping a track on the news cycle, but Jason Isaacs and Henry Alonso Meyers, the showrunner for Strange New Worlds, have been having conversations, and it appears that Mr. Alonso Meyers is trying to draw him in with the fishing line of a really good story, and Jason Isaacs is playing a bit coy. So,
Jason Isaacs would do it for a bacon sandwich. Like he loved his time as Walker.
It's true, he absolutely adored it. So, but I think season 1, it also just has some really strong episodes. Like, I really like the two-part opener. I feel like a lot of people don't, but I do. Has some of the best episode titles in all of Trek. Stuff like, Context is for Kings. Like, the Context is for Kings speech is like, that's
really
a
good.
speech of its own. That's high caliber.
I've always said that season 1 Discovery is underrated. Like, I think,
actually, I do think it is.
It, but that's a very subjective opinion. Like, I mean, Discovery splits people anyway. Like, some people don't like the serialized storytelling, and pretty much any Discovery fan will say, yeah, it's the Michael Burnham show, and your tolerance of that show delves on how much you like Michael Burnham. If you can't stand her, you ain't gonna like the series, like, because it is her show.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also it has probably, if not the best time loop episode of any Star Trek. And I say that because, like, there's a lot of really good time loop episodes, but Discovery's one has a really good twist on it and a really good melding of interpersonal drama with it that I personally really appreciate. So that'd be my contender. But even then, because of how badly it ends, I'm like, you know what, I can't say that it's, like, amazing. But yeah, Strange New Worlds easily beats it in terms of thematic consistency, a higher level of quality. Just, it knows exactly what it wants to be and just goes for it. Whereas Discovery, you can feel a lot of the infighting. The same with Voyager, you can feel a conflict of ideas and stuff that doesn't end up coming out in the wash.
I mean, Discovery lost like 2 showrunners in 2 seasons, so like that was very much apparent. My question to you guys. Okay, so let's loop it back round to sort of pre-May, when the show launched, and back when this was first announced, because obviously there was the fan campaign, everyone was clamoring for Pike to have a series after his amazing season 2 debut in Discovery, and that was sort of, a lot of that led to, I think, Alex Kurtzman and Akiva Goldsman having conversations like, is this actually going to be a series? And I remember one of the early interviews, they were like, yeah, this is going to be episodic with some serialized elements. When you first heard that, and you sort of trying to form something in your mind, do you think that this is actually promised, done what they were setting to achieve? And did you expect them to do that?
Yes and yes. I think for there to be another series that really set itself apart from the other properties that were going, they needed to go something like this route. It's like, does it necessarily mean that they needed to go fully episodic? No, and they didn't. I think the episodic nature of the show as it's done in season 1 of Strange New Worlds is kind of the spoonful of sugar that helps the serialized elements go down. So it's like they still did a lot to Yeah.
Yes, I know. I'm recording a video right now.
That's lovely. That looked good on you.
Thank you. Lost interruptions.
No, it's okay. But the making a story that concludes in the same episode does a lot. It gives the writers and stuff a lot of leeway to put little just bits of the serialized through lines through the story, so that it's a richer experience, both as like a binge watch, and it's stuff that kind of flies under the radar. So like on rewatches, they're like, oh, they did hint at that there, and there. And so they just fly under the radar. So yes, I did expect them to do what they said they were going to do and make it a serialized show. And I think it was largely successful. So, yeah.
So, Doctor, you go first, Austin, then.
No, sorry. I was basically going to say, I think I expected a kind of a balance like this, where it would be a roughly self-contained story, and then meant 10% serialized elements that were going to manifest in ways that were obvious, some that were not. Some way, how quickly is this going to pay off versus not? What I think I really appreciate about how they've done it is, and you kind of spurred it in my mind. So going back to Discovery Season 1, part of the reason why that falls apart at the end, and why that can be underrated by some and considered to be a weak season, is because the central thread of the Klingon Federation War pays off kind of badly. It doesn't end on a particularly satisfying note, because you're like, this doesn't make any intellectual sense. This is kind of like, well, the season's over, we've got to wrap it up. And when every episode is constantly building to that thing, and there's constantly variations on that theme, and that it gives you a really good consistency, and it means that you generally have like a good through line through the season. But if it doesn't pay off, you've got a way harder experience, because you know that it's not leading to something that you're going to enjoy. Whereas with Strange New Worlds, like it both ended well with the thematic tie-in of Pike's reconciliation with his fate. But also, every single one of these episodes you could watch completely independently. Pretty much. Maybe episode 10 would be you'd need to at least have watched Stranger Worlds. And if it had ended badly, I'd still be able to look at a lot of these episodes and be like, that's a really good episode. That's really good. Like if episode 10 had been an utter hash, and Pike's fate had been handled like such a gigabotch, I was still able to go back and watch Spock.
We were all sitting there kind of going, we want to give this a 10 out of 10 season. Like, got this last episode, is it good? Oh, and it stuck the landing. But yeah, go on.
Yeah. But it's like, if that had been an utter gigabotch, I still would have been able to go back and watch Spock and Muck and absolutely have the exact same amount of fun I had when I first watched it. And that is the strength of this kind of storytelling, is you can insulate yourself and still create something that will work on your way, just in case something doesn't pay off. But it did, and that's that's the happy accident.
Yeah, you can go and watch Scorpion Part 1 and 2 in Voyager and go, yeah, this is great, and then just ignore Basics Part 1 and 2 and go, oh, what were they doing? How did the Kazon do this?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Derail.
Good.
My concerns were with just previous intent, like the showrunners and especially sort of Alex Kurtzman's background and Kiva Goldsman's, they're all from serialized television, and our current state of television does lend to that. So when they said, "Oh yeah, we're going to go episodic," I was a bit like, "Yeah, you're just throwing that out there for like the old Star Trek fans that want to come back in, like, we're throwing you a bone," and then the thing would be, which wouldn't have bothered me. I like serialized storytelling. I think it's fine. But then they would have kind of gone and said like, "Okay, here it is," and they visit a planet maybe 1 or 2 episodes. But I was very pleasantly surprised when, like, after like episode 3, I'm like, oh wow, they really are doing this. Like, this is, in this day and age,
different episode, yeah.
episodic storytelling with a small serialized through current, but it's not really heard of. Like, even the Orville has its serialized through lines that are very much prominent in the storylines. So
maybe something like The Mandalorian, but only then season 1 kind of has that feel. But even then, it's still more heavily serialized than even this. Like, this is still so much more episodic.
And it didn't just feel like, oh wow, they're doing us what us old Star Trek fans want. They're giving us, like, Great Strange New Worlds. But it did genuinely feel like a breath of fresh air in a way that I wasn't expecting. Like, I'm watching a TV show, kind of going, oh, I don't really have to be paying that much attention to what was going on last week. Or, like, okay, because we all lamented the fact that they had the previously on Strange New Worlds, and we were like, you don't need this. We don't need this. Yeah. It seemed a bit unnecessary, but it was.
I mean, in a couple of cases, it was detracting.
It did,
from
yeah.
Bit of the episode.
That's one of the few little minus points. So, something I really appreciate about this season, and talking about like thematic consistency, and serialized elements. Do you guys remember those old like Star Trek box sets, especially the 7th season ones for like TNG and Voyager?
Yeah.
And they would always have someone's face on the front of it of a season, right? It's like, like you get Worf for season 3, you get like Janeway for season 1, and then you just cycle through that so you have a picture of all the crew by the end. I feel like if I was going to get a 7-season, God hope they go for 7 seasons, maybe even longer, box sets of Strange New Worlds, you could put Pike on the cover of season 1, and not only would it be like, look, here's your casting, this is his season, this is his story, almost like compressed into a 10-episode nutshell. This is kind of all you would really need. But we're going to get so much more of them. They're going to go into more detail. But I like that feeling of, like, it's this nicely episodic package that comes together when you see it as a whole, and that is, as you say, it's something rare in this day and age.
Yeah, it's we're talking about saying there's no serialized elements, but obviously there are a small one. But how they handle it is also, I said this after episode 1 or episode 2. I'm like, this is borderline genius. I was very sort of like appreciative of them doing the show not tell philosophy. There wasn't just people sitting in a room giving exposition. They were doing a lot of work to show the trauma, to show the links, to put things in each episode that made complete sense. And I'm kind of in awe of the writing team and the directing team working so closely together to actually make this happen, especially with like Pike and that, and like every now and then. And when he got to the last episode, when he got to episode 10, and he reveals that the kid on the asteroid station that we all know as the Romulan neutral zone was one of the kids that goes on to be in the accident that Pike's in, I was just like, I was as floored as he was. I was like, holy shit, they've done something magical here. Like, they're bringing things around in full circle. And, obviously this thread is not over yet, but it was masterful, honestly masterful. Like, I've not seen that kind of integration between story and serialization across a breadth of 10 episodes that hasn't been serialized. Obviously something like Daredevil, like obviously every episode leads into the next, but something that is episodic, that does tell little hints and give little things going on for it, and then pulls it all together at the end, just it's good, makes you happy to watch it.
Well, in some ways it makes it more potent, because when you're watching a serialized story, it's almost like mentally you're taking notes the entire time. It's like, okay, these are all the things that I think I need to remember, and well, that's what, one of the easy criticisms that you can make on serialized television is like, it's exhausting to keep up with all of this stuff. And which is why they do things like, previously on, stuff like that, to kind of ease that burden a little bit. So when something is more serialized and, you don't have to bring everything that came in the series up to this point to this episode just to enjoy it, when there are little nuggets of things that pay off, then, and reward you have gone on this whole journey, then it's just like, oh, it's an extra little hit of stuff like that.
And I think I had to seize on a point that I think was quite satisfying, like in terms of like our discussions, because this has also been a real joy for us. Like this is an experiment for us. We haven't really done a recap format like this, going through a season episode, episode by episode every week. Just get to sit down and talk about our feelings about it for an hour and just enjoying this water cooler moment, essentially, right? But what sticks in my brain is that when we did our episode 3 recap. And Big was talking about his feelings in regards to Una's Illyrian heritage, and just when that was going to come back up, we were like, "Well, we don't know. This could be a season 2 thread. This could come." We were not expecting it to come around and hit us right at the tail end of of Pike's big moment, and that's the kind of the ultimate example of. These serialized elements, because you are not focusing on them, like it came up once or twice. I think the last time they made explicit reference to it was in episode 4 when he was giving blood to Una. Otherwise, it doesn't really come up. And then suddenly, bam! 6 episodes later, it's now the setting point for season 2. That's going to be our big point. And that's a victory. That is a case of, oh, I was not expecting that. Like. When I was watching episode 10, I didn't think we were going to lead straight into the Una plot. I figured we're going to be getting some Pike. Okay, there's a hint that something might go wrong for Una, but it can't be that soon, right? Nope, right at the end of the episode. And that's the strength of it. It's like you said, very well done.
Yeah, and then also just you can think about all the other little dangling threads of things that they teased but haven't come back to yet. It's like your Cybox and your Captain's Angel and whatnot. So it's like
Carnoonian Sing, which never went anywhere.
Yes,
like that's still an open question. It's like did you just have the name? Okay, cool, fine. You're just Carnoonian Sing. Okay. Yeah. That could be the ultimate anti-Chekhov's gun. It's there, they'll never use it, and everyone will be like, "Oh, okay."
It's like the way that this show has been constructed up to this point, because the major criticism of episodic Trek is that major things happen like every week, and then they have no consequence later on. They just kind of forget about them by the next week. It's like, Captain Picard was a Cardassian tortured prisoner. Let's have an episode where they're all turned into monkeys and lizards. All right, yeah, that's fine.
Just Tuesday.
We'll just shrug that off. But this is finding that balance to where you can acknowledge that things happen and they have consequences, but then also you don't need to have, a dry erase board behind you with a bunch of push pins and red string to tie it all together just to enjoy the plot. So it's, like you say, it's kind of a magic trick. It's just balance. It's just...
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
I didn't necessarily want to go with Thanos, but it's hard not to. Yeah.
Please, it's so 2019.
Oh, sorry, Grandpa. This isn't your dad, it's Dados. I want to draw us onto, because I feel like everyone in this cast has proven their bit. Like, there is no one who is a weak link here. Like, you look at DS9 and Alexander Siddig in this first, he's not great.
Oh, no.
Denise Crosby in season 1, like, she didn't have great material to work with, but she also was not the best. Like, she was so much better when she came back in season 3, because that's what happens as an actor. Just like any other professional skill, you get better at it. Whereas, strangely well, it's like we've got a lot of seasoned performers here, like Pike and Una and Spock all have the advantage of having been seasoned in Discovery season 2, so they have a running ground advantage. But again, everyone hit the ground running, and I have to ask, what is you guys' favorite bit of acting where someone just was in the role, in the moment, and you just felt it? You were like, because I can think of a few moments.
I can think of
stuff
one
like.
straight away. I mean,
if I could just give you an example, if you're struggling, which you're not, Pike's speech at the end of season 1, at the end of episode 1, where he just, he's just acting, like Anderson Mount is just doing his Patrick Stewart acting, just like going for it. So what about you guys?
I think just Anson Mount's comedic timing in everything, and Spock Amok was the perfect example of how good his range was, because he goes from like, you know, the friendly dad captain with his powerful speeches and intellect to just like perfect witty. That moment where like Spock and T'Pring, having swapped bodies, are standing in front of each other going, "You can probably tell we are different personalities." Like, yeah, totally. It's just like, it's like fantastic. I love it. So yeah, I think that's probably my best like acting. Like his just switch between, you know, being serious to just like comedic timing is brilliant.
Big.
I'm trying to think, because that was going to be my answer too.
Sorry.
But no. It's okay. I would actually pick a different moment from episode 1. Maybe the speech that Pike makes over the comm to everybody as they're leaving to go on the mission. You know,
nobody dies.
This is nobody's last day.
Oh yeah, that was good.
That's it's all Anson Mount, isn't it? It's just
He's so good. Well, you know what? Then I'll have to rep someone else. As much as we didn't like episode 9, just like Andoria, hits so hard.
Okay, I wouldn't say I didn't like episode 9. I liked most part of it. I just didn't like that Hemmer died. I liked the way he died. Yeah. It just could have been done in about 4 seasons' time. That's my complaint. Like, thinking the episode 9 was great, but...
But yeah, it's just like the performance is just so strong, and it's not overplayed either, which is that's a skill.
I thought of another one, and it's another Hemmer moment. It's Abracadabra.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
It's like,
that is really good.
That's just full commitment to the bit. I mean, and yes, it's like he's sold to be the hero in that moment, but yeah, it's just that's good stuff, man.
You're not wrong. I'd also like to rip Ethan Peck, because like he's just so consistently excellent that it's almost like you kind of forget. I have 2 moments. I really loved the end of the mind meld with Lon in episode 4, where you get that, speaking of Vulcan, and you get that tiniest little hint of Burnham. And like, if you've seen Discovery Season 2, you're like, oh, okay, that's you are thinking of her constantly, huh? And then the way that Lon brings him up on it, and then he just goes frosty in a way that Spock does not usually get frosty. Like, even with people throwing racist abuse his way, he does not get frosty. But the instant you bring that up, he's like, I think we should end this. And there is no talking about it.
Can we talk about how much actual Spock we got? Because like we got a lot more Spock moments than I anticipated. I was expecting to go, okay, Ethan Peck's in this as Spock, and we know a lot about Spock. Like, they won't do too much backstory with him. And they're like, no, they're doing a lot with him. Like, there's a lot of stuff with his human Vulcan heritage they're fleshing out, especially the surprise of like having to bring in so many episodes, and the interactions he has with Chapel. It's just like, in this whole series, we got a lot more Spock, which is great because Ethan Peck is brilliant. He's a brilliant Spock. So it's glad that we get to show that off, and him being probably, you know, character number two, essentially, outside of Anson Mount, sort of makes sense. But yeah, it was how much they're going into it, because like Spock is one of the most fleshed out characters anyway, and we're getting more of it. So yeah, and they didn't do it badly as well.
That's the thing. I was going to say my other big Spock moment is episode 10, not just his Nimoy impression, which is impeccable, but it's the moment at the end of the episode when Pike says, "You are very important to me," and he says, "As you are to me, Chris," and it's such a small thing, but from Vulcans, you search for those small moments. It's the Tuvok putting his foot out for Neelix moment, where you're like, for a Vulcan, you might as well be saying you love him. It's so well played and so tender.
I think Ethan Peck has that great comedic timing as well, like the little sort of nods and little sarcastic remarks he like puts out there. It's very, very Spock-like humour that he likes to have, like especially with Chapel when he turns around and goes, "Yes, I know it was a joke." Like, oh yeah, there you go.
Okay, then you know what? I had to ask, what's your favourite Spock humorous moment? Because there's so many, and hard mode, you can't pick Spock and Mock.
I knew you were going to say that. Oh,
you can't pick it. You can't pick it. Because for me, it has to be episode 10. Pike and him in the briefing room.
I was going to say that.
It's like, I do not drink coffee. I do drink tea. Then would you like some tea? No, Captain.
No,
Just Every time I see it, I laugh so hard. It's so well done.
Oh, I can't think that was going to be my one. So
Maybe Children of the Comet, where he's trying to give Uhura the pep talk and he botches it the first time.
oh yeah, that's a good one.
And
He basically asked for a
What do you
feedback
think?
at the end of it, like he's a survey.
yes. At the end of this call, would you rate on a scale of 1 to 5?
Yeah, I can't think of one other than those two because I think that's the top of it. Oh, maybe
Yeah,
maybe with him talking to T'Pring over the comms when him and Chapel, he's trying to pretend that he's like not in love with Chapel. He's sitting there trying to bullshit things in front of Angel. Maybe that was quite good, but and then Chapel's heart is just breaking.
Oh yeah, I also really enjoy the spit take he does when T'Pring is talking about human sexuality.
Yes. No, you said we couldn't pick Spock and Mock. You were cheating here.
That's not Spock and Mock. That's episode 7.
Oh shit, yeah, it is, isn't it? Fuck.
See?
Damn it, big fan. All right. Yes, but that was good.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay.
All right. Moving apace. So this is a throwback. It's a massive throwback, not just to a different style of television, but also in terms of Star Trek style. Like, when Dax and Cisco and Co. go back to Trials and Tribulations, like Dax spends half the episode just gushing about 23rd century design, like black finish, silver highlights. And they really kind of lean into that 60s retro vibe. It's not too oblique. It's like, if anything, it reminds me a bit more of like some of the modern Bond movies where they harken back to more of the Connery style, where it's like you're taking some of the aesthetic, but you're not going for a pastiche or a throwback. You're just lifting it into the aesthetic and making it work. Because there's stuff like Chapel's dress in like Spock and Mark, where it's like that's a very 60s style dress, or the Tricor design, which is upgraded but still very much just the classic 23rd
It's the black
century.
box, isn't it?
Yeah,
exactly. So, what's your favorite bit of 60s, like either style or a species or a character that has been taken into 2022 and redesigned, and why do you think that it's so strong?
Gosh, I should have prepped this.
Well, I have several. So the obvious ones for me, the update on the TOS style EV suits, where it kept a lot of the color scheme, and it is, you can very much see the beekeeper outfit from Tholian
Web,
yeah. It's there, but then they actually made it look like a functional environmental suit. So that's an easy one. The update. Well, you know what? I shouldn't just eat it all up because you guys might have ones too. But one that I didn't really kind of grok at first, but because at first I kind of got lost in the Apple Store Enterprise Bridge kind of thing, which isn't as bad as it is in like JJ Trek, but it still didn't really read for me as the Enterprise Bridge at first. But the way that they did all of the instrument panels to where they still have
that's so good.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that blend. Right. Sorry to cut you off, but that blend where you got the overarching circular control panel with the classic little nodules in them, just like I want that in front of me. I want to be sitting. I wish I was better at DIY.
Well, and it's like, and you absolutely see Spock's science station as Spock's science station from the bridge. You see Uhura's communications station as that, and it's like I appreciated that more and more the more I saw and the more detail I saw in it, while at the same time still having enough modern touches that you could think, okay, if you're going to move that forward from today's tech to that, you can see it from there. It's functional. So that's my secret best glow up. So yeah.
Idle?
I think it's the Enterprise itself. Like, we'd seen it at the end of Disco Season 2, very briefly in Discovery Season 2, and a little bit in one of the short treks, but the amount of love they've given it in this series, the amount of... Because they've redesigned it ever so slightly. I think they've made it bigger as well. I think they changed the dimensions of it as they want to do, which pisses people off, but fine. But they've really nailed the because the JJ Trek stuff, the '09 Enterprise was very much this is a much more futuristic Enterprise. It's a completely different refit, but they managed to know that this is going to be the Enterprise we see in the future and keep it into the state of the canon and make it look gorgeous. Like, I prefer this Enterprise to the TOS. Like, this is heresy to some people, but I prefer it to the original series one, because original series one is a bit of a basic model, but it is the pioneering model that everyone bases every design off. But this is a loving remake of it, complete with the spinning nacelles and the deflector dish and everything, with a few little things where they indent the saucer section with that new windowed gallery and things like that, and to even showing where things are on the ship, like the galley is on the front of the ship, you're seeing the walk, it's the 10 forward of the ship and things like that, and you know exactly where everything is. And yeah, the Enterprise has definitely been my favourite. This is what they've done with it, because it's an iconic ship. You've got to do it right.
You want a hot take?
Go on.
I think I like this Enterprise better than the TOS movie version of the Enterprise.
Oh, interesting.
The refit.
Yeah, because yes, the TOS movie models are gorgeous, and they are an extension of that original classic design that basically improves on it in every way. But like, as you say, it's like there's just so much more detail, which you can do with CG, obviously. So yes, you can just see all the little things, and whereas like you look at the movie versions of the ship, it's just kind of flat. It's like maybe you've got some windows here and there, but other than that, you really don't have a lot making it look like a functional ship that has a bunch of different things and parts and departments and all of that. So, but this you do. So it carries forward everything that you like and love about previous versions of the Enterprise and just adds to it. So
let's look at what
adding on to that.
Oh, go on. Sorry, go on.
Well, adding on to that, does it not make you even sadder now thinking about Star Trek 3 when you know that Pike's Enterprise gets blown up over the Genesis planet? Because like I was rewatching Search for Spock just like you. I was like, no, that's Pike's Enterprise. You just blew up Pike's Enterprise. I was like, I care about that now. It makes it feel like it has so much more history than just 3 years of Kirk and a movie. It's like you see that, and it's like that is a ship with a history and a tradition, and it's lost, and it's like Pike would approve. He'd be like, yeah, no, fuck it. Blow up the Enterprise a million times if it means that Spock survives. That's the entire point of like episode 10. But it does make it hit that much harder, and that's a real. If you can say that about a prequel, guess what? Your prequel succeeded.
Absolutely. Just sort of looping back around to what we're saying about the design of it. What we could have got is, if you've seen the TOS remasters where they decided to change everything to CG, and that model is not the nice. Like when everyone's tried to do a CG model of like, it's even in Trials and Tribulations. I can never say that. Tribulations.
Trials and Tribulations.
Thank you. I sound like Porky Pig there. That's all, folks. Yeah, if you look at that CG model, it's like, it's very much taking, this is what was in TOS and we've just rendered it in Blender. Like, it doesn't look good. I think this is a much more modern take with better rendering, and it shows.
Yeah, absolutely. My pick for best redesign might well go to the Type F shuttlecraft, because
yes, that was good.
They really do a good job of taking what was kind of an awkward, ugly-looking box into us. Like, it's still like it's cute, and I love the stuff like the hand signing of like Galileo on the site, because they all had their names. And it makes it look like so much more of a ship that could take a beating. Like, if you told me that a Type F shuttlecraft was like, nudging off the sublimation of a comet and got hit, I'd be like, that thing never survived. Screw that. That thing blew up like quicker than anything in Voyager ever had. But I looked at the one that they have in Strange New Worlds, so I'm like, this is such a elegant design, and it feels like it's part of the same design lineage of the Enterprise. I love that they kept stuff like the weird little circular viewers on the side, but it's an actual a functional shuttlecraft that feels like it could be used for shuttlecrafty missions, like in Episode 4 when they go out to scout on the Gorn. Like, it feels like it can contribute and hold its own in a way that I don't feel like the original. But it's partly just a case of the limitations of the effects at the time, but such a nice update on it, and getting to see it in action was really, really good fun.
Can I
also,
interject with another redesign of something I thought of, and is the uniforms. The uniforms wasn't expecting them to redo the uniforms when they first came out with this, because we'd seen the season 2 Discovery ones, and they were like, these are great. Yeah. And at first when I saw these ones, I'd be like, oh, they're redesigned, these don't look. But as the season went on, I love them more and more. Like they absolutely fit the aesthetic. And looking at the evolution, because if you looked at one of the episodes, they had a background picture of Captain April and assuming his commander Pike at the time wearing the old cage style ones, which, the turtleneck jumper kind of thing.
I love that.
And so they're actually establishing a period. You know how fanatical I am about like uniform like consistency. They are saying like, oh yeah, the cage ones were used here, which would have fit with the cage. Then they went to the Disco season 2 ones where they had the fancy black collar, and now they're going on to these ones which fit much more in line with what we know in TOS. So I really appreciate that as a way forward.
I also, just as a thing, I appreciate the differentiation between science and medical blue, and having a nurse's outfit that is bright white, which was on the big holdovers from Discovery that I liked so much, of having the medical white. Just from an operational standpoint, it makes sense, and I like the visual contrast. I'm that nerd that I like the bright primary colors. It just pops better on the eye, right? I
none of this mixing pastels nonsense.
I absolutely adore the first Contact uniforms, but especially when you watch them for multiple seasons, they do get a bit grey. Having bright contrast, like in Discovery Season 4 and now here, it works so much better. It helps it feel a bit more Trek, honestly.
Yeah. Well, okay, since nobody else mentioned it, I just figured somebody else was going to pick it up. The other fantastic redesign to me was the redesign of the Romulans and the Romulan uniforms.
Oh, yeah.
In Quality of Mercy.
That was good.
So good.
Because, like we've talked about all these other things, it carried forward so many of the things that we loved about the original versions of them, and then just made them work in a modern context in a show in 2022. So that was my other pick, and I just wanted to leave it out there for someone else to pick up. But since no one did, I will take that one myself too.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. I love those original Romulan TOS outfits. And I watched Bounce of Terror just prior to watching Quality of Mercy because I had a feeling that that's what the episode was going to be from the trailers. And me and my friend Katie, the 60s and 30s are dated, but even her, as someone who does not massively love TOS, who is watching this for the first time, she saw that contrast of the chainmail design and the sash and was like, "That's a fresh design. That's a good look." And to see them come back and be given such love and a nice update that also feels consistent with what we see in TNG and Enterprise and Nemesis in terms of that gold and green sort of design. It's such a nice unification of design. It just feels like such a nice
you did
way
that.
of doing it. Yeah.
Unification.
Well, and that's maybe a thing. It's yes, the Romulan uniforms in TNG and DS9 kind of became their own kind of iconic in their own way, but it's seeing what they've done on Strange New Worlds now makes me think it's man, could they have found a way to have done that instead? It's keep some of the purple, keep some of the color and the life to it instead of just making the big
shoulder pads,
massive shoulder pads. Yeah,
yeah.
It was the 80s. You can't get away from that. I feel especially if you think about the contrast with the Klingon designs, which they held over from motion picture, but especially Worf's sash, for example, is such a nice update on the sash that Core had in the original series, and it's they didn't really retain as many of those elements as they did for the Romulans. So it was nice to see that come back with such force, and I hope that kind of influences Romulan design language going forward.
Sure.
We could rave about how good this show looks for ages. It looks so good. There's very little that falls flat. I'm
going up to a 9.5 in my ratings just for the last half an hour.
I know, right? So, you know what? Then we had to take a downer. Okay. So we can't. I have to disclose our biggest disappointment. And it cannot be Hemmer because I think the fandom at large was just disappointed about what happened with Hemmer. So, apart from the fate of our beloved chief, we're never going to be over it. Never.
It's a pain that will not go away.
So, what is your biggest non-Hema disappointment from season 1?
For me, I think it's fairly clear the utter lack of development of Una as a character over season 1. Apart from just, establishing that she is an Illyrian and then paying that off at the end of the season, there's almost nothing. Like, she gets to be a buddy cop with Lon for one episode, and then in other episodes they find reasons to take her out of the story in the way that they really don't for any other member of the cast. So I
see your Una and I raise you on Ortegas, who didn't even get a singular episode like Una did.
Yeah.
She had moments, but yeah, you're right. She didn't have a thing.
Yeah. So,
but your point is still absolutely valid. Absolutely feel you on that.
I don't think I can say that there was anything that really disappointed me that I think that they won't solve in season 2. So Una will looking absolute like she will get more development going forwards, and Ortega has to have something, like, who just needs some more background. I would say my disappointment was a little bit of a technical disappointment with Benga's daughter. How, like, it's like, oh, she's just sitting in the transporter buffer, and then it just pulls her out for story time, and then she, in her perspective, she comes out, has a story, comes out, has a story, comes out. I was a bit like, needed to think that one through a little bit more, because there was just a bit of like, she's in there, but yeah, and the whole kind of, I know some people were, I wasn't quite as enthused about her treatment as, because I think you and me disagreed on this. We had completely different answers to this question. You gave us stars on that episode. Like, how would you as a father treat that as one of your children? I was just like, no, I wouldn't want to let it go. Like, like, this is, but how that quickly just sort of went from just like, I'm here to save my daughter, and then, oh, she's gone, and I'm fine. And that's one of those moments where it's a classic Star Trek, like, next episode, he's all good. So, yeah, it's... Yeah, that's probably one of my specific disappointments. My other disappointment would be Captain Battelle would always have something cooked for her by Pike and would never eat it. How dare she? He made her breakfast. She just left. He then came back and went, I've made this lovely carbonara. She's like, spaghetti again. Takes a mouthful and fuck off. So, yeah, maybe that's my other...
Actually, something that's not specific to a character, but maybe is a disappointment, especially on a show with only 10 episodes, so it just kind of demands to be rewatched, especially if you like it and you're just like, well, I've got to watch all this again, is the dropped threads and red herrings that have kind of come up, because we talked about the limited amount of serialization elements that come up in the story. So, and bringing up Rukia kind of made me think of that. So, the red herrings of potential ways to cure her condition, stuff like the lift us up where suffering can't reach, to where that's a potential solution to it.
Yeah, they really teased that out there. They were sort of going to like, I'm going to share my research with you, and there could be a potential thing here. And they went, no, they're just going to ignore that. She's just going to go off with a space alien.
Yeah. And then, just bits of the Gorn story that just kind of at this point just are paid off with a hour-long monster movie that also kind of feels like a season of build-up for something that isn't necessarily all that satisfying. So that is something that rings a little disappointing to me, is that kind of thing.
For me, I would have to say I am a little bit disappointed in the lack of LGBT representation. You have the non-binary character Captain Angel. I've talked about the complicated sort of like aspect of that in that recap, and if you're interested in that, then go and have a look at the actress who plays Jesse James Keitel.
Yeah.
On Twitter, they have talked. She has talked at length about the character and its history in regards to trans characters and stuff like that.
I actually didn't know she was trans until after the episode. So that was, speak to the influence. So like that's his own conversation. I feel like she was a great performer, and I quite like the character. Aside from the hamminess,
but to her coming back.
If she was told to do hammy,
love the hamminess.
And did hammy well, like fine, like it was a switch between how I am the bad guy. So that was that own complete with that, not anything to do with her acting.
And apart from that, the only mention we get is the teasing that Chapel might be bisexual. It's in kind of a throwaway line. Most of her romantic lines are in relation with Spock, and she specifically says the right guy. I'm just a little bit disappointed because after Lower Decks has gone on to show us like some good like LGBT stuff, after Discovery has 5 or 6 main characters who are gay, trans, non-binary, queer of some description, and for Strange New Worlds not to have a single one really, apart from maybe Chapel, feels like a bit of a step backwards.
There was Elysian Kingdom where like, and this is one of the things I hate about like very obvious shoehorning in of sort of gay representation. So like, oh yes, we're an item. Oh yes, we very much are. So like, we're doing this, and that's there was a Doctor Who.
There's always been a pool on the roof of the school.
Yeah. And there's like a Doctor Who episode with 2 of the, I forget her name now, the lizard character and her in the 19...
Madame Vastra and
Madame
Jenny,
Vastra, that's right. And they're like, we're lesbians, don't you know? Yes, we do. We are all doing it all the time. We're lesbians. Like, yes, we know. You don't have to, like, say it 100 times. It's great. But, like, yeah, that felt like a bit like that. Is just like, here's your representation. Now, shut up.
I'm fine with it, mostly because of the fanficky fandom reclamation context of that. But it's just a case of that wouldn't even register to you as a queer baity weird moment if there were a single gay character in the cast.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't even have to be gay. It could be like bisexual or just like anything. Like, it's space in the 23rd century. You're really telling me that no one is like they're all straight?
Why do you think Pike's cooking so many people food and having so many parties? There's a pot in the middle of that room with keys in it. You know it. Tricorders. Tricorders.
I thought I had read that Melissa Navia considered her character to be on that spectrum also. But as of right now, it's not text. It's subtext. You have to read that into it. So they can
I read that interview and she's like, like queer energy. It's like, guess what? Melissa Navia, I fucking love her. Twitter is incredibly engaging. She is like a strong, wonderful, good, gifted performer. And it's guess what? That's my other big disappointment of the season is that Ortegas did not get more development.
But, you don't want
but that is not the same as text.
You don't want them to just do it to tick a box, though, do you? Which is where Discovery's been quite good with LGBT representation, especially like they've won awards for it with like Stamets and Culber and like Adira and Gray. Like that's felt very natural in how they've done that. But you wouldn't want Strange New Worlds to go like, crap, we need a bisexual character. Okay, Ortegas is just going to be kissing this girl in the background. Like, what? You don't want them to do it and then just go, oh look, pointing fingers. You need it to be a bit more realistic and a bit more accepting.
No, absolutely. But it's just a case of. So I'm going to get cynical here, and I don't actually believe this, but here's the thing. This is the optics of this, right? So Discovery is divisive for many reasons. Lower Decks is your... People probably consider it questionable canon, like a comedy spin-off. Picard is also divisive for other reasons. So you launch your big flagship show, which is as safe as it can be in terms of... it's like literally half the cast of TOS characters... It's all throwing back to the original, back to the intro. And then you coincidentally put out a nicely diverse cast in terms of skin color, in terms of gender, but not a gay person on the thing, not a non-binary or transgender, apart from one villain and an offhand reference to a potential liaison. And that almost seems to me like... We have to put the gays in the other shows, and this is the safe one, so that people can watch it and not be offended. Guess what? I don't believe that. I don't. No. I am not that cynical. And so, guess what? Full disclosure: if it's not clear from watching our other videos, I am a gay man, so I have feelings about this.
Me and Big,
I don't believe that.
So we have no comment.
That's the thing. You're more than welcome to give your thing. It's just a case of I feel like I have to speak on these issues, right? Is that I like the show a lot, and I take it at face value, but it does just disappoint me a little bit when I see almost every other show in this lineup having at least a character, someone in the background. Like Lower Decks has like people kissing in the background all the time, and they can be male, female, not like aliens and things. It's just not commented on
because
that's the
on record
Roddenberry
to have having many sexual liaisons with all sorts of gender, species, or mineral compositions.
Exactly,
like, she limits herself to anything. I think it's quite endearing.
Yeah, precisely, and that's the Roddenberry utopia, right? Like Roddenberry would approve of that.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. The Roddenberry utopia is everyone doing anything to everyone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's all Edo all the time. And it does just disappoint me that the show that I otherwise love so very much does not have queer representation. I'm hoping that's something that might change. We're having a new main character introduced next season. There is always a possibility that Ortegas will get developed and she might get another relationship. They've mentioned stuff with Chapel. Maybe that will get.
Una's sexuality is never.
Yeah, that's also true.
Out. Yeah.
I would be very interested to see any of these characters. I would welcome it because it's a case of like there is so much good rep in the other shows, and I believe that Star Trek is about that as a brand, a franchise, as a vehicle for storytelling. Just come on, throw us a bone. But that's your last you'll hear on me about it. I'm not a militant. The thing of like, they're burying the gays.
You've convinced me. I'm down to a 9. I was up to a 9.5. I'm down to a 9 now.
Guess what? Still more queer rep than 90% of the other like shows, especially Enterprise was aggressively hetero. Enterprise was so heterosexual; it was offensive. With the
where's my Strange New Worlds decon scene? It's like, didn't they retire these 100 years ago? We've still got one.
We'll find a way. So yeah, those are my disappointments. So now that I've talked to you about down to a 9, I have to talk you back up to a 9.5.
Okay. Bring me there.
What was your favorite Starship porn moment? Because guess what? We have a good friend, Automaton 2000. He's done a few of these videos with us. He unfortunately could not be with us here today.
He was nearly here. Yeah.
He was very nearly here. We really wanted him on, but we could not talk him down. Yeah. He has to go and win a skirmish.
And he wanted more money.
He had to go and win a skirmish or something. It's fine. But we three here, I feel like me and Idle especially, Big, you actually have schematics on your wall. We love our ships. We love the ladies of the space lanes. We love a good pair of ample nacelles, right? So
I just watched 09 as well.
So we've already talked a lot. I gushed about the redesign of the Enterprise, but what is the moment where you just looked at something in space, whether it was the Enterprise or the Farragut or one of the other ships, and we were like, gorgeous. What was your moment?
I have two. My first one is not the Enterprise, but they both actually don't involve the Enterprise much anyway. First one is from Memento Mori, when they're being hunted by the Gorn ships, and that one moment where that Gorn mothership comes out of that cloud, and you just see the cloud parting way for this big ass twisted ship coming out. It's just like, oh, that looks so good.
That really Star Trek Insurrection moment through the Briar Patch.
Yes, it was. Yes, it's the sonar ship coming out of the Baku Nebula. What was it? No, the Briar Patch. The Briar Patch. That's the one. Yeah. My other one was, like you say, the Farragut, was that gorgeous shot as they're tailing the Romulan ship through, and you see the silhouette of the Farragut as from the perspective of the Enterprise through the ice tail of the comet. As it's like,
so lovely,
so good. Yeah.
Big.
Okay. Well, it's like I'm the noted ships. I mean, schematics aside, I am like the ships are not the main course for me on the series. But so I have a couple of things. One is not a ship hero moment. It's just something that I thought was cool, and it's another thing from Memento Mori, and that is when the Gorn ship implodes under the weight of the black hole. Yeah, like that. I felt like that was really well done. And then another one is, I believe it was in Spock Amok, the solar sail ship. Where
I forgot about that.
And then even the moment where they raise the Federation flag and they're saying it's like we accept your terms, and so just bringing back the solar sail ship, that was an awesome piece of callback for me, even though it's obviously before that in time in a totally different context. But just anybody that has seen DS9, it's like, oh, I know what that is. And so
can I interject and just like that whole sequence where those aliens, and everyone's thinking, oh, they're just reading the person on the opposite's reactions and reacting accordingly, and Pike just breaks it down at the end and goes just like, no, they just want to be heard. And that was just like, that's kind of one of my favorite Pike moments. He just explains it in almost like Columbo way at the end of an episode. It's like, no, like this is what they're doing.
Because he's literally saying to fucking his immediate superior, his previous captain, Robert April, hero of the Federation, come on, man, where's the drama if I just tell you what I'm gonna do?
Yeah, great context, doesn't he? Yeah, sorry to sidetrack on that, but that just reminded me of that pretty awesome moment.
Yeah. So I have a few. One that I absolutely love, and again, it's from Spock and Mark, from pretty much the same scene. I absolutely adore the shots of the conference room when the Enterprise is just sitting there. When it's just like that view of it sitting in dark.
Whatever it is, Starbase 1 or whatever it is.
Yeah, Starbase 1, and you can just see it just sitting there, and it's like, man, that is a good-ass looking ship. It's just like, you look right sitting there. I absolutely also love the moment in episode 4 where they're drawing up on the Gorn ship, and it's through the cloud, through the brown dwarf just dissolving around them, and you just see the Enterprise do this amazing turn around, and then it does a very Wrath of Khan style reorientation, and for a moment, even though it's still that, it has all the same design elements as that Matt Jeffries 60s design, that weird bumpy like saucer with like some bits stuck on the end. It looked very aggressive for a moment, and I like it when a starship can manage to look aggressive through and especially because it also zooms way in on the torpedo tube, which is like such it's talking about the details. Well, yeah, because you get to actually see where the torpedo tubes are on the TOS Enterprise, which are always like, you know, they could come out anywhere in the TOS effects. It's like, oh, are we shooting phasers or totons? We can't be sure. The effects guy is just doing whatever today. I also absolutely adore there's sort of two in episode 10 when the Farragut gets completely destroyed by the bird of prey.
It gets fucked up. There's an extended sequence, isn't it?
It really like shows off the destructive power of that plasma torpedo. Like, you see it and it just 86s it in an instant. And there's just this incredible, you can just see it bleeding life support into space. And you're like, that thing can't hit the Enterprise. The Enterprise will die. So when it gets fired at the Enterprise and it just hits it head on, you're like, oh, that's going to hurt. And it's like when they say, oh, man, we lost fire control. I was like, you're lucky that's all you lost. That could have been real bad.
We've lost the cappuccino machine. Shit.
Oh, God. All the glasses in 10 forward are broken. All of them. And I also absolutely love that moment when Kirk brings the drone fleet up to form a protective shield for the Enterprise. One of them gets completely destroyed by one of the plasma torpedoes, and you get that washback of all the energy, and it like buffets it like a wave, and then they have to warp out of there. Like, that is such a... Like, I appreciate that for, you know, a season of Star Trek, you can sometimes go, you know, like DS9, for example, they get really into the starship combat and really give it that, like, loving detail. But here, we kind of don't get a lot of extended sequences of ship battle. Like, the most we get is Memento Mori, but it's mostly a game of cat and mouse, not, like, straight exchanges of fire.
Yeah. It made me think, because there was... Well, go ahead. Finish your point.
Well, because I was going to say, one thing I love about, like, Star Trek, and it's, like, it's part of the reason why Wrath of Khan works so well, is there is never a moment when two ships are firing at each other and they both have their shields up. Because then you have the Voyager problem of, oh, shields are at a XYZ percentage for drama, but we're actually fine because we're going to do an extended sci-fi gizmo bullshit. It's like, every time they come into contact with, like, another ship, either they massively outclass it, or they're massively outclassed by it, and shields will help, but they will not save them, or they're down because they're in the brown dwarf, or because there is a fucking fleet that is about to kick their ass. It's never about tactical superiority, it's always about intellectual innovation, and I appreciate that as a Starfleet and Star Trek ethos.
All that said, I did think of another moment that is kind of counter to that. At least my read of it is the bit in Children of the Comet, where they are fleeing the shepherds, and Ortegas is having to, you know, try and do her best to navigate in between.
Literally holding that on the tip of my tongue as you just said it. But yeah.
So that may be the most like ship to ship combat that we.
But they never fire phases back. They fire phases once in
no,
that
they're
encounter,
just-
which I really appreciate. It's like that's kind of tying into
running.
it. And in terms of the Starship porn, like seeing that in context, like I saw it in the trailer, and I was like, oh, okay, that's a cool effect shot. But seeing it in context as like Ortegas' big moment, like makes an instant impression. Like that's way more impressive to me than almost anything Tom Paris did across his 7 seasons, apart from maybe the Dr. Flyer.
No, this is the cool Tom Paris. We know that.
It's true.
And then I just thought of the maybe the prettiest thing that I saw that, from a space context in the season was just that initial shot of the outpost in Quality of Mercy, where they're panning out from that.
Oh yeah.
Just see.
Oh yeah, you got the 2 starship. Yeah, that's really good.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really good. Oh, you know what? I have to give a shout out to the intro sequence, which is like we were a little bit lukewarm on the opening music. I've started to really warm to it.
I like it.
But
yeah.
even from the moment one, the visuals on the opening sequence were just sublime. They were equal, if not better, than Voyager's for the time. Especially the shot of that pinky blue nebula, and you just see the Enterprise at a distance, just slowly entering it. It's like that, just so well done, so beautifully detailed. Like they really, they put in the work in there, and also a really good detection of a black hole in episode 4. Like that is a really, like, not quite interstellar, but close in terms of how detailed and pretty.
So,
like some of the stuff that they did in the intro for A Strange New Worlds is so good that I request and require Lower Decks to do some kind of spoof on it. In their season 2 of
I'm sure you've heard the news. I'm sure it's coming.
Yeah.
Can I interject with this is wrapping this small little section up. Would you like to know some of the other things that Henry Alonso Myers, the showrunner of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, has done? He has worked on the TV show Charmed. He's worked on Ugly Betty. He's worked on Chuck.
Like you do.
The Carrie Diaries, and The Magicians. And then straight on
to that's the one with Rebecca Romaine.
Was she at least? Was she? Okay.
Yeah.
But and then straight on Strange New Worlds. But I was just sort of looking through his resume and just kind of going like, well, this is nothing like science fiction. He's gone on from these shows to kind of just make an amazing first season of Star Trek. Like, why has he been hiding? Like, get him on earlier.
All these, usually you'll look at somebody and it's like, oh, did Babylon 5 and Battlestar Galactica, and it's like stuff like it. But yeah, that's a total left turn.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like when I heard that Ronald D. Moore was working on For All Mankind, I was like, yeah, that tracks. That makes perfect sense. But you tell me this guy worked on Charmed and Chuck, and I guess I can kind of see it because he's got really good situational comedy like props. But like, Sir Sci-Fi guy seems to be very, very. He has very particular tastes.
Yeah.
But yeah, just thought I'd mention it.
Yeah.
All right.
Good on him,
so
he's
the
awesome.
true MVP
It makes me want to go back and watch Ugly Betty. Come on. Hey, sorry.
No, you're all good.
I'll see it again for the first time, as it would actually be my first time.
Oh wow. So now the real MVP of any Star Trek fan's heart is, of course, the Enterprise. But who was your personal most valuable player? Your MVP of season 1 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, who just filled you with joy every time they were on screen.
Well, the default answer has to be Pike, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, he drives the bus of the whole thing. He's, especially this season, being largely focused around his story and his plot. So I think I'm going to have to put Pike off to the side just to come up with a more interesting...
Yeah, they'll disqualify him, yeah.
Yeah. So I think in some ways it's counterintuitive, but I might say Uhura. And you have to hear me out on it a little bit. Uhura kind of became the audience proxy for a lot of this series, because they had the plot thread of her doing rotations through the different departments and interacting one-on-one, with Hammer and Lon, and it's like she had her moments and she did very well. Stuff like in Children of the Comet, where she stepped up and took control of a situation and helped work things out, and Memento Mori, where she solved the problem with Hammer. But I think also Uhura kind of helped us get to know the rest of the cast better and deeper. And it was also, I didn't expect much from Uhura as a character, as just kind of a legacy character that through 3 seasons of television and 6 movies, we never really got to know that much about. But
she didn't have a name until the 2009 movie.
Yeah. So we learned more about her story in a dinner in one episode of Strange New Worlds than we did in all of that other media. And then also just coming into her own as a character, learning her journey to becoming the Uhura of TOS, which is not a story that I even really thought I would like to know, but now I do. And then also combine that with the things that she did for the other characters, kind of helping bring the whole thing together. So she's kind of my, to put it in sports terms, she's kind of the glue guy off the bench that makes the whole rest of the team come together. So that's my answer.
What about you, Idle?
I'm also going to go with a bit of a left field choice. La'an was a joy for me to watch every time because she's almost the Worf proxy, as it were. She's the fish out of water. She's the sort of
Worf. Oh no, she's that in mold. Yeah.
She has that kind of relation to it, but she had a depth of a backstory, and obviously everyone's watching her because of the Khan link, which didn't go anywhere, but maybe it will at some point. But she proved she was more
yet.
Yet. She was more of the sum of her parts, but like she had that hard ass sort of attitude, and then often like when she had, I forget which episode it was, when Uhura was training under her and she was giving her the 10 steps of security.
Episode 6.
It was 6, was it? And at the end, she sort of throws her a bone and sort of says no, you were great. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And you see her dealing with the Gorn stuff and sort of we had a little journey with La'an through the story as well, because she sort of comes on as just sort of like, oh, I'm here temporarily, and Pike sort of says let's bring you on full time. And she even has her own comedic moments as well, when obviously she is the princess in the Elysian Kingdom, and absolutely shows her comedic
I should go do the security thing.
I should go do the security thing. Or when she's like in Pike's quarters, when it's like, have some waffles. No, I'm not hungry. And then she takes a bite and like, oh my god, these are amazing. And Pike's like, yeah, I'll give you some bacon. Like, that's like so good. But every time Lan's on screen, I'm just like, I'm gonna pay 100% attention right now because you're awesome.
For me, I'm gonna have to rep Auto here a little bit because I feel like we're both kind of on the same lane with it. I'm gonna say Mbenga.
Oh, interesting.
Because I almost always love every medical officer in Star Trek. It's just something that just runs through them. They're always awesome. And Mbenga has just this... He's utterly professional. I 100% buy him as a doctor. But also, he just the added dimension of him as a father who would literally risk his career, his life, anything for Rookie. And regardless of how you feel that plot thread ended, I personally was okay with how it ended. I cannot doubt his dedication, and I feel like he just there's a moment in episode 3 where Una says, you're a Starfleet doctor, there's always a solution. And it kind of ties into that thing of in DS9, one of my favorite lines in the entire thing is said by Kivan, of all things, one of the Vorta. He says, one of your famous Starfleet engineers who can turn rocks into replicators. And it's just like the idea of Starfleet personnel as these wizards, these miracle workers who can just, who can cure a rainy day, And Mbenga just flawlessly slots into that. I believe that man could cure a rainy day.
Until he does a chemical experiment and wears no PPE. He just inhales all his gas and explodes. That was the one point I was just like, are you a doctor? Like, you should be wearing some sort of mask at this point if you're putting chemicals together.
It all worked out in the end. It's fine. So long as he didn't have to write out an incident report, it's fine.
Risk assessment on the Enterprise. Shit.
OSHA says you've got to have a railing there in engineering.
That's deck 11 to 12 is just paperwork.
Gotta fill out those TPS reports. And I also just appreciate... So something I just kind of unremarked upon in Stranger Worlds, and it's kind of comes up. Almost everyone on the ship has at least one prior relationship with another character. It's not like TNG where almost everyone is brand new to the ship, or DS9 where everyone is brand new to the ship, and you have one or two people who know each other, but otherwise you don't. Like Pike and Spock and Una, fucking tight as you cannot break that team, right? Uhura already is good friends with Ortegas by episode 2, and by episode 9, like she's like the one that is approaching Uhura and trying to pull her into the social aspect of the promotion ceremony. Ortegas and Chapel have clearly already solved together because they already have like this history of like going out looking for guys and cruising. Mbenga and Pike know each other from touring in Kenya and the Mojave. And Lon and Una have their relationship. I appreciate that everyone has a confidant and someone that feels like that they can go to, because that means that you have natural pairings of characters. And it also means that when those pairings are broken and you get a completely unconventional pairing, like, say, Hema and Mbenga, you get a whole other dynamic that springs up and you want more of it. Now, granted, we won't get that last one because of the tragedy.
I keep forgetting, and you keep just reminding us, and it's just, why?
I know. But I appreciate it. It feels like a choice that they intentionally made, and it makes it feel a bit different to the occasional standoffishness that you get in the first season where people don't really know each other and they don't know what to make of each other. Like, you think of how, say, Riker and Picard are in season 1, where they're a little bit standoffish and they aren't quite sure what to make of each other, and they'll make big gestures of trusting each other, but then it's like when they start working together in, like, say, like the Bionar episode, it feels like a growth because they've come through together and they're working in tandem. Whereas, like, here, it's like, no, you already have some of those relationships baked in, but you can still see other new ones grow, and I appreciate that as a stylistic choice for the characters.
Sure.
Thank you.
No, I'm sorry.
All right.
My kids are being ridiculous at the same time.
Nah,
so
it's fine.
You're all good. So at the start of the season, at the end of episode 1, me, Otto, and Idol, Big unfortunately was not with us at the time, said what characters we most wanted to see developed. And now I kind of want to do a compare and contrast on how we are feeling about those characters at the start and at the end. So, Otto said Mbenga at the beginning, because he had knowledge and affection for him from TOS. I feel like he's probably got to be pretty happy with the amount of development he's gotten and the amount of focus he's gotten. For a character who was in TOS, like, what, twice?
Yeah.
He's been given a focal, strength. He's going to be a focus in season 2 because they've said that he's going to have a pre-existing relationship with the Klingons, possibly related to his wife's death. That's going to be delved into. So he has brand new storylines that are going to appear. I feel like he's going to be pretty happy about that. Idol, you and I were in agreement that we always wanted to see Erica Ortegas developed, and unfortunately, I think we kind of got the short stick here.
A little bit there, didn't we? I hope we get more. I do hope we get more. I hope this could be a season 2 thing where we'll get a little bit more of her. Like, I've been doing a rewatch of season 3 of Discovery, and like one of the things people always say is we want more about the bridge crew, and, like a little bit of that. And it kind of does feel like now I've come from Strange New Worlds and gone to rewatch Discovery, I'm like, actually, I can see why they're not doing that, because they're not main focus of the show. Whereas a lot of the cast in Strange New World are, and it feels like a big odd one out that Ortegas hasn't. Even Hema, in his limited capacity, had episodes of her obviously being one of the big points, so it kind of does stick out a little bit like a sore thumb that Ortegas is sort of left hanging a little bit.
One of them was planned to be killed off before season 1 even started, and the other wasn't. So if you're going to give him an episode, best to do it now.
To be fair, every character who's died in Star Trek wishes they had an episode as good as the Elysian Kingdom to do an abracadabra right? Like, that's historic. It's so good.
But it's so tragic. You give me that episode where you sell me on, like, oh my god, Hema's a comic genius, like, he's got all this flamboyancy, and then you kill him off, and you just make me angry. You show me so much promise, and then it's gone.
No, you're good. But yeah, like, at the start of the season, I was like, you know what, Ortegas, I like the kind of the cut of her jib. And seeing her in different situations, and seeing her really try and pull her out of her shell, seeing her relationship with Pike, which is like that kind of back and forth, playful, mentory, like protege. I feel like of anyone on the bridge, it's not Spock or Una. She's maybe the one he's closest to or feels the most affection for. Like it feels
you
like
can tell by the hair.
He's almost. Oh yeah, absolutely. And like her emotional vulnerability in like the funeral for Hemmer, like she's the first one that we get the eulogy for, and it's a well delivered eulogy where you feel the loss.
I think it's not a case of we don't get enough Ortegas, because we've gotten quite a lot of it. Like we've got a baseline of what her personality is. I think we want to know the history. We want to know the story and get an episode focused on her that the resolution of the episode is determined by the character's actions. I think we want to know where she sort of
very well
certain things are said. So like I think we want to sort of see the test under the metal, really, don't we?
Yeah.
So. Big. I've been leading the conversation here a little bit, and I feel like talk about Strange New Worlds all fucking day. But I feel like I should probably give you guys a little bit of room to talk.
It's fine. So, okay, so the stuff that I had written down, and I don't think we got to this just because I had stuff like MVP. Disappointment, things like I had, what was your biggest surprise of what happened in season 1?
Biggest what, sorry?
Surprise.
Oh, surprise. Gosh.
Yeah.
I think Una being the Illyrian was the big, like, oh, you're just like, was, I mean, I understand we knew nothing of her character pre Strange New Worlds. Like, obviously we saw that she was very analytical, very sort of a bit of a workaholic, as it were, but we knew nothing of her, and suddenly like to get like no character
where fun goes to die, one might say.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a great moment. Her and La'an doing the Enterprise bingo was the closest we got to kind of like a little character analysis for her. But then for her to turn around and go, oh yeah, she's an Illyrian, she's been genetically modified, and like all this was a kind of like, oh wow, that is actually a big leap to take for it's weird. It sounds weird, but it's not. Like, it's a big leap to take for a character we know nothing about, but we do know, we have a cultural sort of appreciation for the character we've known for however many decades. So it's weird to, like, it's very brave of them to kind of go like, number one, she's almost beloved in a way because it's Major Roddenberry, to kind of go, we're going to introduce this big twist on a character, but actually kind of makes sense.
I remember when that happened, because it's right before the revelation that she's Illyrian. You get her carrying Hemmer through the hallway to the sick bay, and I remember my friend Katie was like, "How the hell are you carrying him?" It's like, "Oh, I'm a little bit disappointed they haven't made her engine like an augment, kind of like in the books." And then she just drops the "I'm an Illyrian," and Katie was like, "Yes!" She was so validated by that moment, and it is such a usually, it can vary just how much a race adding that kind of thing to a character can change them. Like, some characters are almost exclusively defined by their culture and how they relate to it, say, like Worf or Odo, where, like, that's a big part of their story. Whereas some other characters, like Troy being Betazoid, doesn't really affect her character arc. Her relationship with Riker and, like, stuff like that is way more important to her character. But with Una, it's like taking a character we know so little about and then immediately throwing it into this very different light. And especially one associated with a kind of a dark chapter about not just Earth's history, but also Earth's current, present state of affairs with the augment ban and that prejudice that we talk about this quite a bit in episode 3's recap, where that is a prejudice that is codified into law in the 23rd and 24th centuries. That is not something that goes away. Even at the end of this is an enlightened utopian society, but that's the one blind spot, really. And to take a character who, as Idle says, is kind of beloved and throw that light on her it's a big move. And we have to hope that they keep on paying down on it in season 2, because as you guys have said, they haven't really capitalized on it yet, but I'm hoping it's more of a case of season 2 is, as you're going to get your season 2 box set. It's going to have Una's picture on the front. I'm hoping that's what it's going to be.
So to expand on Una, like the whole Illyrian thing was known previously. Like there was a book, and because I knew this came from a book, so I just very quickly googled it. A book by John Jackson Miller released in 2019 called The Enterprise War, which was supposed to fill in the gaps of where Enterprise was during the Klingon War. Actually said in that book itself that Una was an Illyrian, was raised as a human colonist on Illyria and raised as one of their own. So like very nicely telegraphed that this came from the like non-canon sources, but they've integrated the canon same way that they have with Uhura. Like Nyota came from the books. So a nice little nod there that they're sort of paying attention. And they've done this before with a few other things that I can't recall right now, but they've pulled from non-canon sources and kind of gone, yeah, this aspect of it is canon. So I quite like that.
Well, the amount of animated series pulls that like Modern Trek is doing for a series that was
canon,
originally,
damn it!
It is actually canon now. We saw the giant Spock 2 skeleton. It's canon.
Absolutely. Screw what Gene Roddenberry thinks. It's all canon, all the way down.
Yeah. So that's Idle's pick for biggest surprise. What about you, Big?
Well, I think an easy one to say is how integral T'Pring was to the plot of the series overall. Because when you saw ahead of time that T'Pring is going to be a guest star in Strange New Worlds, it's like, okay, maybe she'll be in an episode or something. It's like maybe they'll do something off of Amok Time specifically, you know, something about that where she's a one-off. Maybe she's like Loxana character. She's just annoys the crew for an episode and then she goes away. But she was in it quite a bit, and
3 or 4 episodes, yeah,
and wasn't an antagonist. I mean, she was really, you know, very friendly with Spock, friendly with the crew that she interacted with, and interacted with Pike a fair bit, and so that surprised me because I didn't think that she was going to be a character that would have impact, and she absolutely did.
Especially for a character that has like this baggage from TOS, where it's like it's been recontextualized since. Where like in the original 60s, like wow, what a stone cold bitch wanting to get like Spock killed for her own benefit, and then it was kind of like reassessed by fandom as like, well, Spock was kind of leaving her out to dry, and it's like, like recontextualizing it as like attitudes toward women have changed, and then they kind of bring that into the forefront and canonize it here, where they're saying, no, there was an aspect where Spock failed here too, where he didn't, do all that he could, where he had maybe a wandering eye. We don't know where that's going to go, but at the very least, there's a case of he is not right for this relationship, and they are ready to explore that. And it's that thing where Strange New Worlds is not afraid of taking these canon characters and making them wrong or kind of the villain of a situation, even if they're doing it for all the right reasons and being true to themselves, like Pike and Spock. Like Pike was being essentially himself in episode 10, but he was kind of the villain of the piece because he was the one who fucked everything up, actually. And that's a bold move. Like, it's not often that you get to see instead like Picard or Cisco be the villain of the piece. It's usually something that's like done once or twice, but there's thematic weight to it.
Cisco bombarded an entire planet with some radioactive material, and just to prove his point against Eddington.
Well, to be fair, Dax literally tells him be the villain of the book, so that. But here, that it's a bit more thematically tied in, a little bit less telegraphed. But yeah, no. If you had told me that not only that T'Pring was going to be in Strange New Worlds, but also integral, and I liked her, I would not have believed you, because like the amount of heavy lifting that Get Out of Town, We Are Not in a Town can do for a character cannot be understated.
Well, and then another surprising element too that talking about recontextualizing is the Spock Chapel dynamic.
Be Still My Beating Heart. Oh my gosh, this killed me the entire season.
Because in TOS it is very much a it's all chapel, and it's like Spock is not even present or aware of what's going on, and I did not expect for it to be as front and center in these stories as they have been up to this point. And of course the it begs the question of when the other shoe is going to drop and how that's all going to resolve itself for TOS to still make sense.
I've said this before. I want this to be an alternate reality. I want this to be the Kelvin verse of TOS, so it does happen and works out, because the eyes that Jess Bush makes at Spock is just... I am not into any kind of like romantic stuff. My wife watches like rom-coms, things like that. It doesn't sway me at all, but this has turned me into a mushy pile of goo every time she's on stage, or there's any kind of reaction, because I'm just like, I want it to happen. Like, come on, like, it's so, and it's because of the tragedy. There is a tragedy, and I know it ahead of time, and it's like, oh no, why do it to me?
It's like you see the trains coming from a ways
You
off.
just know it's happened, and it just hurts all the more, and that's good in a way because it makes it exciting, but also I wish they wouldn't.
There's a dynamic to their scenes that reminds me a little bit of Sarek and Amanda, not just in Discovery, but also a little bit in A Journey to Babel, where there's just that affection and that understanding between each other. You know, that gentle teasing of Spock, that was a joke. Oh, I know. You know, humans are almost as easy to tease as Vulcans. And then just like Chapel gives, it's like, yeah, that I can totally imagine that when Sarek and Amanda first met, they had a moment similar to that. Because it's just like, that's the moment when the two cultures meet, when it's just like, you can step outside that comfort zone and just be with someone. And it's like, that is the ultimate tragedy of Spock and Chapels. I can see it. I could see them happening. I could see them being happy, but it won't happen.
It won't. And it's the one thing, like, fan fiction writers of this, or in potential slash fiction writers will write of this, is like, they won't feel good about writing it because it just won't ever happen, and they know it in advance. Like, people that write fan fiction between characters are always like, well, in some future series it could happen. There could be, you know, Worf and Dax, maybe, you know, could be on the cards. She's into Klingons, like, but no, it's not, and it's so sad.
Well, I mean, that's why they would have to write it, because that's the only way they'll ever see it.
You got to get it out there.
Credit to Jess Bush for just the stunning range of emotions she portrays, like, just with a look. Like, when she's sitting opposite the table to Spock, and you can see the moment. It's like that kind of moment in The Simpsons you can see with Ralph Wiggum, where you can see the exact moment where his heart breaks. You can see the exact moment where her heart is engaged, like, where she is that moment. She's like, she just looks down and she looks up, and you just go, oh dear. Oh dear. That's you're in for it now. And she sells it so well. Like, you just...
My personal picks for surprise, I've got two. Cyborg.
Yes! Oh my gosh!
If you had said to me that a character in a live-action Star Trek movie or a series that wasn't maybe Lower Decks, like you see Lower Decks maybe of doing,
Lower Decks would take a piss out of Cyborg, wouldn't they?
Yeah. But Strange New Worlds being like, no, we're gonna treat him like we said Thanos, and it's right, they do frame him like that. So, fucking Cyborg of all people, and I'm like, I'm excited for it.
So many people I've seen going on Twitter now, and it's like, I've always loved the Final Frontier. Like, the fuck have you? That's bullshit. You're just getting on the train because Cyborg appeared. That film is trash, you know it. But I am excited for actually doing Cyborg justice, because Cyborg was the best part of Final Frontier. Well, one of the best parts of Final Frontier. So, yeah, they will have to be careful with this, but they have to be careful with a lot of things already, and they've done that quite well. So I trust this team to do Cyborg well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of the thing. It's like much in the same way that the live-action Star Wars series have taken some of the more maligned parts of the franchise and are trying to reclaim them. It's like Strange New Worlds is kind of doing some of those things too, and they're doing it well enough that I'm kind of hoping maybe they lean into it. It's like, have another crack at Spock's brain. I mean, who knows? Like, how bad can
Mary up to these days?
Can you make... Yeah.
Okay.
Go visit the Grups, you know.
How much do I have to pay Paramount for them to remake Spock's brain, but with the Strange New Worlds cast, and they play it as a joke? Can you imagine? I would pay so much money for that.
They transport to the future and they end up through the wormhole, and all of a sudden, Alamarine!
Oh no, not the fucking Wadi. God damn it.
No, they'll find a way to make the Enterprise go warp 10, and then they'll just
we've been
unravel
lizards all
from there.
along.
Yeah.
No, they go to warp 13, and then they get fucked by the Zeltans, whatever. My other big pick, Sam Kirk. I was a corpse, an actual corpse, who has been disrespected by this franchise so much. In the final frontier, Kirk says with a straight face, I had a brother once, I lost him, but then I got him back. And in the fucking afterlife, Sam Kirk is like, the fuck, man? The fuck?
Wait,
And now it's
no. Because this precludes the search for Sam Kirk. Maybe he did get him
wow.
back. He wasn't talking about Spock. Maybe Sam Kirk will come back. He didn't die
Damn
on a
it.
planet to some weird goo.
Damn it. But if you had told me that let's be real, the punchline of Sam Kirk in episode 1 is so well done. They do it with such levity and such like
They say Lieutenant Kirk, and you're just like, really?
Moustache.
This soon?
The moustache. And not just a joke, but he actually helps Uhura like center herself in her first away mission. He helps give Pike some context as to what his brother is like as a starship commander. He's good for he approaches her and is like, "Hey, how you doing?" It's like, "Oh, I'm out of here." Like he's appeared in 4 episodes, and he's like in the slightly different context each time. It's like the Gorn raised your Hudson character. It's like, for a character who was a corpse and a mustache, they've done a lot of work with him, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't even think about it until you just mentioned it. So, like, he's the red herring in episode 1. So it's like, oh, they're not bringing in Kirk now. And then, of course, the news had gotten out that Kirk is going to be in season 2. So then that just completely throws you off when Jim Kirk does show up in episode 10. Unless you watch the opening credit.
When they mention it. It depends on how clued you are in on who the actor is. I'm sure there's plenty of casual viewers going, "Oh, new Star Trek series, let's watch this." Would have been completely thrown by it. So, yeah, we can see that. I think it was a little bit of intentionally genius timing, or not, for them to kind of like before season 1 had turned up to say like, "Oh yeah, this guy's playing Kirk in season 2." I've forgotten his name already. Paul Wesley. Paul Wesley, yes, that's right. It's saying like, yeah, he's in season, and we're all just like, we all spoke before about.
We were worried.
We were pissed. We were slightly annoyed. Just like, how dare they upstage Pike already? But and then in that, like you say, the red herring in the opening episodes, like Lieutenant Kirk to the bridge. I'm like, are they really going to do this? And no, of course it's fucking like Galaxy Quest. Sam Kirk here, Guy Fleegman. Yeah.
The actor himself, Don, he's like a really cool guy. I'm kind of happy for him because like this completes a second video game. Like an actor who I've seen in the video game first hated the character, and then they appear in a Star Trek property and I liked them because Anson Mount was also in a video game I didn't enjoy very much. And both of them now are. I want Sam Kirk in season 2 as a regular. Come on, why not?
Why not? Yeah, at this point, I'm happy with that.
Not?
Yeah,
like at this point, he's slowly edging toward being more than just a punchline, and I'd like to see more. Just get his wife in. I want to see him being a stupid romantic goober, and like constantly. I want him to be the George McFly of the Enterprise.
He's not found his wife yet. What if Ortegas is his wife?
His wife's name is Orlan.
Oh, we already know that. Okay, never mind. She could change her name. Ortegas Orlan. That's a typo.
That'd be weird. I don't know if I could stomach that relationship. That'd be weird.
Yeah, that
but
would be odd.
Maybe? I don't know. Dan, his mustache is very charming. I don't know. But yeah, that was my biggest surprise. Okay. We've been talking about season 2 a fair bit, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have... I'm only going to outline what we generally know at this time. Because San Diego Comic-Con has just been and went. We got our announcements. There was no season 2 trailer. I figured we wouldn't because it's too early. Even though the production is wrapped, there's going to be months and months and months of effects work, because God knows it takes a lot of time and work to make this look good.
We didn't get a season 1 trailer till very, very late. They sort of keep
on
the shelf for a while, so...
Yeah. So I'm going to outline all that we know about season 2. So, everyone is returning, including possibly Bruce Horak in a different role. It was clearly going to become the Jeffrey Combs of modern Star Trek. We are getting a new chief engineer who is very unlike any other chief engineer we've had.
And not Scotty.
It is not Scotty, which I am so pleased about. That is exactly the right choice. Well, it's the second exact right choice. The first choice was not killing Hammer in the first place, but whatever. We know we are getting more Paul Wesley Kirk, and he is going to be a lieutenant. He is going to be hanging out with Lon. He is going to be growing.
Though. He is going to be a captain because the shots that they showed, he had 3 stripes, didn't he? I'm sure they...
No, that was from the episode 10.
No, because there's him and La'an on a planet.
No, well...
He's a lieutenant.
Pike looks up his file at the end of the episode, and he's a lieutenant. He's
sure
a goofy, grinning-looking lieutenant.
Guess what? It also wouldn't be the first time we've had some costuming errors with these cuffs.
Well, true.
Yeah. We literally play up, for context for viewers who are coming to us who are not playing Star Trek Timelines. Both Spock and Ortegas have been given the wrong ranks in that, and they've been credited as lieutenant commander when they're lieutenant, because the cuff system in Strange New Worlds is inconsistent and weird.
It is, however,
which is consistent with TOS. So that's
once my screen's filled with adverts, I am seeing a shot
consistently inconsistent.
From behind the scenes of season 2 of Strange New Worlds, which has La'an and Paul Wesley as Kirk on a planet. Christine Chong has the 2 stripes of lieutenant, and he has the 3 stripes of captain. So unless they're going to play some more time travel,
well, possibly. But I'm going off what the personnel file in episode 10 says, and also what the showrunner says.
I'm literally, I'm not so, I'm sure there may be some time travel shenanigans there, but we'll see.
Possibly. He's going to be a lieutenant aboard the Farragut. He is not yet the Kirk we know. Apparently, he's going to be a bit more funny, which I am glad, because that is an essential part of Kirk as a character. Is he has a sense of humor. We're going to get more Lon. She is not gone forever. I imagine she'll probably be back on the Enterprise relatively quickly. We're going to have some kind of
episode 1. I would be very.
I'd be shocked as well. Yeah. Even if it's just a lower deck season 2 style Boimler cutaway. We are going to get some development on Una. We don't know what form that's going to take, because they have been very tight-lipped about how that's going to play out. Yep. What else? Mbenga is going to get some development in terms of his relationship with the Klingons, which implies to me that Klingons are going to appear.
There was a leak from one of the background actors. There was 2 background actors that took a picture and posted onto Twitter, which got deleted very soon after their Klingon makeup. So we've known Klingons are coming for a while now.
Yeah, so that's a hard confirm, and the context. I imagine we might be getting some post Klingon war. I'd be curious if we're going into the wounded territory, with
let's
old wounds.
Let's get Laurel and Tyler back. That would be cool.
I'd be happy to see Laurel and Tyler back from Discovery. What else? They have been very about, if you liked episode 10, apparently season 2 has a few episodes that are even more like that. So we might be getting some weird ass shenanigans in season 2.
Oh, who mourns for Adonais part 2?
Oh God! Roy ran into the Norse pantheon. God damn it!
Another god.
I feel like
God damn it.
It's going to be an evil computer. It's always an evil computer on Star Trek. We're going to get an Ortegas episode. That's been hard confirmed. We're going to get some development for her. Pike is going to be a bit of a changed man in season 2. He's going to be he's going to be carrying this weight, but he's a bit more free now.
He's going to have curtains.
Give him the beard back. I miss the beard. He's going to be carrying that weight, but he's now kind of freed because he's dealt with it. He's, I think Azamat said this is Act 3 Pike, whereas we were with Act 2 Pike previously. Spock is going to be delving more into his human side and his relationships. And apparently they're also going to touch on his dyslexia from Discovery Season 2. which is a plot point I was not expecting to come back, and I'm kind of glad because
Yeah, they
that
kinda
was something that
left
was
that
brought up in season 2 and was like it felt like a the magical autism superpower thing that allows you to understand things you shouldn't understand, and I was like, but the fact they're actually going to develop it means okay, I'm glad with that. And I feel like that's everything we know about season 2 as of right now, because they're being very tight-lipped about it. So,
Yeah.
with all that information, what do you want to see in season 2?
More of the same. I was, honestly, like, if they can knock season 2 out with the same kind of quality and structure as season 1 has been, I will be more than happy. Like, I have heard they are, I think Melissa Navia was saying words like, it's going to be more outrageous. It's going to be a little bit more of a step up in terms of like intensity of the episode. So like, fine, I don't mind them sort of change things up, but I would like them to kind of go like, you've hit a great season 1. Take feedback from the great season 1 you've had and do that again. That was great.
Yeah.
I don't want them to go to the point like, oh, we're cocky. We had a great season 1, so we can do some weird stuff that makes us kind of go, no.
We're going to do a musical episode.
Actually, I wouldn't mind that.
I'm down. I'm alright. I'm okay
At least
with
in
that,
Kingdom
actually.
Show Me, they can do any kind of wacky stuff. So, like,
Celia Gooding has a background in Broadway. Give me an episode. I'm alright with it.
yep.
What about you, Big? What do you want from season 2?
Okay, so they have hit on almost all of the main tropes that you would get from, like a TOS TNG style episode. There's the first contact kind of thing. There's
the plague.
Yeah, there's the fantasy dress up episode. But there's two types of episode that I don't think they've really broached on yet. One is talking a computer to death.
That's a classic. It's an oldie, but it's a goodie.
Yeah. And the one I would most want to see is I want to see a Lawyer Pike episode.
Ooh.
I was going to say, if we don't get a courtroom drama, I'm going to be
Samuel T.
disappointed.
Cogley, bring him back. He was so good. I loved Samuel T. Cogley.
Okay, but it's like, but my real answer, and it's a cop out, but it's the truth, is I want to see stuff that I didn't know I wanted to see.
That's a good answer.
Those are the best things that I've gotten so far from this, and I want them to keep doing that because their hit rate is phenomenal up to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I want some more deep cuts. They've said, watch this space for Dr. Roger Corby. Keep on going. Show me like Lieutenant Jim Kirk hanging out with a bar and swapping kisses with Janice Lester when they're still in their honeymoon period. Yeah. Show me him like swapping mails about like matching command targets with Lieutenant Gary Mitchell. Give me a hey. What happened to that little blonde lab technician you were hanging out? What was her name? Carol Marcus? Give me all these little deep cuts. There's so much you can draw on.
So Carol Marcus's dad was, infamously from the Star Trek movie of all time, Into Darkness, was a big wig in Starfleet at the time. We could see maybe not Peter Weller, but someone else in the role as Carol Marcus's dad come around to sort of tie in that little.
Get Joel Kinnaman. Just keep the RoboCop continuity.
I actually quite like Joel Kinnaman. I was seeing him in the Suicide Squad, so fuck it, why not?
I don't know if they were going to do James Frayne as the Romulan commander. Then I don't know if we're going to have that kind of foresight.
Yeah. Oh, I have to retroactively add that to my disappointments. We didn't get James Frayne as the Romulan commander. That would have been hilarious. Yeah. Keep on with the deep cuts, but make sure that they are in service of the characters because they've been doing such a good job of it so far. Every time these characters like T'Pring and Kirk and Sam, every time they turn up, it is in service of the characters and not just for the fan service aspect. Like, these are characters who got maybe like 20 minutes of development and were killed, or their emotional impact on a main character was just shoved off to the side. give that emotional development and those impacts. Like, the Farragut, like Garavik, Dicronium crowd disaster. Like, that was brought up for one episode and then it disappeared from Kirk's character. Show me how formative that was for Kirk. Show me, like, you know, all of this stuff and allow it to become a cohesive whole. Because with a prequel, it can be so easy to give you a character who is like the previous version and has all the right, you know, biological details and stuff like that, but does not have the same essence. But Strange New Worlds has been doing such a good job of retaining who these characters are that I want to see them keeping to because we were talking about this, especially in relation to Paul Wesley Kirk, where he doesn't feel quite like Kirk, partly because of performance, but also you were saying about his characterization as a risk taker. It's like, oh well, that's from the TOS movies. It's like these are the same character, and that was retroactively added on already.
Yeah.
So if they can pull off like some kind of magic trick to make stuff like that, where it's like all one cohesive character, like they have been doing with Spock, where it's like, you know, the cage weirdness and then into the emotionlessness. Like, if they can keep on with that, then I think we're on track for a super good season 2. In terms of what else I want a stupid TOS classic alien to turn up. I don't know which one. The Gorgon.
Right.
The Gorgon from The Children Shall Lead.
I tell you what, their animatronic work has been fantastic. Like, wasn't expecting this level. Like, Children of the Comet, like the shepherds in that. I thought that was CG. Like the big view screen alien, the alien that appears on the view screen with the pulsing head. I thought that was CG until I saw behind the scenes someone leading someone in the full regalia. It's all animatronic, sort of like hair, a little bit of CG touch up. But I then rewatched the episode and went, oh yeah, because you see his mouth moving as he's talking. That's someone actually, you know, that's not.
Yeah.
There's something about your brain that can tell when someone's talking and when they're not, like when the lips are moving in the right accordance. And that with the Gorn and with, oh god, what was his name? Buckley.
Buckley, you always
Buckley.
forget.
Yeah, the uncomfortable breathing of Buckley that gave me an anxiety attack just watching it. Like,
such a good animatronic work.
It was so good, and you know, in this day and age, you don't expect animatronics, and it's always so much better when they do.
Tholians. I want Tholians.
Maybe. Could be.
No,
yeah.
They're completely undeveloped. They have been appeared in like 2 episodes max, and they are so unlike most other Star Trek life forms.
I think that's what they're doing with the Gorn, though. I think they've already got the Gorn to fill that space. I think the one thing
even if it's just one episode, I want it. Even if it's just
I
one.
think what was not explained in Picard Season 2 and what I was hoping a little bit more with La'an is more exposition on the eugenics wars and World War III. Yeah. There's still a huge gap in the history of Star Trek, which is something I want to touch on in a future show at some point. That I want to know more, and I think there's the opportunity with La'an to pursue that, and especially with Pike as well, having interacted with Terra Elysium in Disco Season 2, which was a village or a town that was transported during World War III to another planet. I think there's opportunities there to expand on that, and even Episode 1, they showed footage of World War III and Civil War II, which is a little on the nose, but it was there. I want some more of that, only because of my own predilection as a bit of a lore buff, that I want those gaps filled out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a segment in mind. Now, at the end of every recap, I asked these esteemed gentlemen what they would give the episode out of 10, and I would give it a special flavor for the episode that was appropriate. So what I want to do now is I want to give you guys what you scored every episode, and I want you to let me know if you agree with that score, if you think that it should go down, or if it should go up. Because I feel like addressing these episodes each on their own individual merits, with the benefit of hindsight, seeing how they fit into the wider season, and on rewatch, what you feel about them. So, Episode 1, Strange New Worlds, fumbled first contact scenarios out of 10. So,
I forgot you gave them these things. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I gave it a 9 out of 10. I would probably agree with that. I might even inch a little bit higher, but I still feel like that is such a strong pilot, such a strong mission statement for the season and for the show as a general. I'm happy with 9 out of 10. Big, you were not present with us, but you have told us that your score at the time would have been 9 out of 10. Do you still agree with that score?
Absolutely, yeah. It does so much heavy lifting of getting everybody into the place they need to be for the season to start in earnest, and then at the same time tells a story, a complete story on its own, and then also just has some of that, just put it directly in my veins, Starfleet Federation philosophy that you almost can't get enough of, all in one package. So that's an easy 9 out.
The idealism.
Yeah.
Auto gave it a 9 out of 10. He's not here, unfortunately, but we can, I'll bug him about his score later. Idle, you also gave it a 9 out of 10. Do you stand by your score?
I'd put it up to a 10. Honestly.
Really?
I honestly would, because now rethinking about it in the context of the season that we got, like Big said, it sets everything up. It has a good plot to it. It doesn't really have anything that I can say is a major negative, apart from a couple of maybe small dialogue points, but it is just great. Okay, they had that moment where it's just we're a bit confused about what was happening with they're transporting the genetics into Spock's eye, but it was a good moment of tension. It had everything you needed for a pilot to bring you up to date, even if you weren't familiar with what happened in Discovery Season 2. It had everything there to give you enough to be aware of what was going on. So for a start of a series, just for the sheer fact that how relieved I was that they pulled it off, and that I just kind of went, oh, I get what they're doing with this. I get the feeling of where they're going with this series. Oh no, maybe I will go down to a 9 because Battelle left the food on the plate. And she just walked away. And as someone that doesn't like to waste food, so no. In serious, I think I would upgrade it to a 10 because I think I again, like you say, episodes you can watch over and over again. That's one of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Episode 2, Children of the Comet. Evasive pattern Ortegas Gamma 1s out of 10. I gave this a 9 out of 10. I stand by that. I think this is an amazing episode for her that really effortlessly blends giving her a actual backstory that also combines her linguistic skills with her musician skills, which is an underrated part of her character, and of Nichelle Nichols' impact on the character. I like the small developments for Spock. I really appreciated Sam Kirk's role. This is kind of Ortegas' big moment in the context of the season as a whole. Pike gets to do some good old-fashioned Star Trek TNG. Oh, that's an enemy that's bigger than us, but we have to find a way to do it anyway. I love the fuck the Prime Directive. We're doing what's right. We're not going to leave a planet to die like we do so many times in TNG. I stand by a 9 out of 10.
Janeway is fuck the Prime Directive. We're going to leave this planet to die.
So yeah, I'm standing happy with a 9 out of 10. Idle, you gave this a 9 out of 10 on first watch. How do you stand by that score?
Honestly, I'm going to give it a 10 again. I rewatched this recently. I know I'm broken record right now. Again, it's a episode I could watch over and over again. I could go back and say this is a classic Trek episode. This is an episode I would want to watch. From the moment of them discovering this comet to then going the cutaway at the break to them going, oh, it's got shields. Why has it got shields? How is this
such a classic Trek moment of
and they go over and there's the trope of oh, we can't get back, but Sam Kirk has this stupid moment, but has that moment with Uhura works out, decodes the code that is music, which is something I am keen on. Music, decodes music as a code to bring it all out, and it's a solid episode that resolves itself very well. And I think when I watched it, I didn't want to give it a 10 out of 10 at the time because we didn't know the scope of the rest of the season. You're always afraid to give it the perfect score, but honestly, it was so good. I cannot fault any part. Now, especially now I know that the aliens on the screen as well were animatronic and weren't just CG. That gives it a whole other level of wow, they put effort into this. This is great. So I would absolutely upgrade to a 10 for that.
Okay. Big, you gave this episode an 8.5 out of 10. This was our first decimal score of the season. Do you stand by that score?
Yes. I might even go ahead and bump it the half a point to a 9 because I think I was definitely that was the first score that I gave of the series. So I even more didn't want to. I wanted to leave myself some room to grow. But yeah, it does all of these things fantastically well. It is not one of the absolute highlights of the series, but it is one of the very, very good. Like it's if you wanted to tier them, it's like at the top of the second tier of the season's episodes. Yeah, it's solid.
Strong tier 2. It's a favorite.
Yeah. For all those things that you've already mentioned, so I won't rehash those. So I would probably go ahead and bump it up to a 9.
Absolutely. All right. Episode 3, Ghosts of Illyria. Emergency medical transport of children out of 10. Otto gave this a 9 out of 10. He was very complimentary about this. I think partly because he really likes the medical plague trope, and it was a bit of development for Mbenga. And it gives you have your tropes where it gives a certain member of the cast who otherwise doesn't get a lot to do, something to do. I gave this an 8 out of 10. I was actually one of the lower ones on here, just because like medical plague episodes, like generally speaking, for me, I'm like I can take them or leave them. Especially in DS9, I felt like they did them a few too many times, and I was like, these are a little bit interchangeable. I think I might bump mine up to like an 8.5 or a 9. Just because of seeing where it stands in the wider scope of the season, setting up Una's problem in season 2, setting up Mbenga's trajectory, and it's just a strong mystery of its own. I really enjoy the sections with Spock and Pike on the surface as well, like their dynamic, where it kind of has that Kirk edge, but Pike is still his own character despite being cast in that very similar mold. It just holds together very well for me, and I really do appreciate the classic Star Trek twist of, these creepy, plasma phantoms. Oh, they're actually going to help us. That's a very classic Star Trek archetype of the scary thing in the room actually wants to help you, and I appreciate that every time that trope comes up. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's like, no, we're the bad guys sometimes. Don't assume based on appearance. Now. Big, you gave this a 9 out of 10 on first watch. Do you stand by that score?
It's tough because it's another one of those tier 2 episodes for me, but where it's not. Now, it does have the benefit of it basically gives Una almost all of the character development that she gets in the entire season comes in this episode. So if you are hungering for that, then you need to give this episode its props because that's where it all comes from.
Yeah.
But like you say, it's medical emergency. It's like that part of it. The mystery was fairly good on a first watch, but on a second watch, it kind of loses some of that sheen to me.
Initial mystery, yeah,
which that is much worse on other episodes that we'll get to. But so I might actually bump this down, and it's not really. I'm not criticizing the episode itself. It's in the context of the rest of the season. I think it doesn't burn quite as bright as some of the other ones, so I might bump it down to an 8.
Okay, that's fair. Idle, you gave this. You weren't present for this episode because we've had a bit of a rotating roster here. You gave this a 7 out of 10. Do you stand by that score?
I think so, but I think again because I wasn't there and I gave this fairly recently. I think the whole outcome of what happened with Mbenga's daughter Rukia left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth a little bit, just because it was there were things on the way that you kind of got the hope that maybe she'd be cured in a logical way, and how she was handling the transporter buffer just didn't sit with me well. Una's story as well is fine, and it's great. You know, the surprise of her being Illyrian is a great choice, but I just need more of Una to get. I've still not quite got a baseline on her yet. I've not quite got the kind of handle on the character and the person she is. I need to see her in a command situation. I need to see her in charge of the ship and see what kind of first officer she is, because they've made a point of saying, oh, one of the best first officers in the fleet. We're like, okay, that's great. You're alternate saying you're telling us that, you're not showing us it. I've always praised them for being show not tell, but that's one of those occasions I kind of need to see more of her to know what she is. So I feel that this episode didn't do a lot of that. But seven's great. It was a good fun episode. So I'll stick to a 7 for this. Like, by no means, it's probably the lowest rating I've given anything of this series. Well, apart from one other episode, but it doesn't mean it's bad. I mean, it just means it's not up to the high standard of the rest of the series.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, episode 4, Memento Mori. Neon torpedo casings out of 10.
Flash.
Auto gave this a 6 out of 10. I think he had problems with a bit of the pacing and some of the disjointed memory because of the plot, because it's split across multiple parts of the ship with multiple different characters, kind of going for that disaster feel. And he wasn't quite feeling it. Big, I believe he gave this a 6 out of 10.
Oh, I did. Wow. I would bump it up. At least 1 point, maybe 2, and that surprised me because I expected, going back to the other Gorn episode, to like it less because of where it eventually ended up. But I think it hangs together really well as a submarine story. And some of the choices that they made, the physics of the things that they did around the brown dwarf and the black hole were very, very smart. And I think it also serves as a really nice counterpoint to A Quality of Mercy, in that it shows Captain Pike in a battle kind of situation, and it shows, no, look, when push comes to shove, he can do the thing too. He can be kind of a warrior, a commander of a battleship, if and when he needs to be. It's just that's not his preference. But it does show that he does have some chops, and he can be strategic and can come up with solutions on the fly to get them out of trouble when they need to. So
yeah, that's not a failure of skill, but more a failure of killer instinct, as it were, almost.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. So we're going to bump that one up to an 8. Idle, you gave this an 8 out of 10 on first watch. Do you stand by your score?
I think so. I think that's... Yeah, this was... I very much enjoyed this episode. It's a very tense sort of Hunt for Red October style thing. I think the neon casing put me off a little bit, but for the rest of it, it was great visuals, great tensity. I don't know, maybe I would push up to a 9? I can't remember why I set it to an 8, maybe 8.5. Maybe I'll push up to an 8.5. I say I'll play it safe.
That's fair. 8.5 is a very respectable score. Yeah. I give this an 8 out of 10. I am happy with that score.
Yeah.
I might bump it to an 8.5. It just hangs together really well. It also does something I really appreciate, which is like there's a lot of this element where it's like this is the Mutara Nebula battle, right? And that's like kind of your touchstone.
Yeah.
But it also had the good grace and intelligence to pull from other ones that have done this. Like Disaster is a really strong pull, and that's not an episode that you would normally associate with submarine drama. But when you think about sort of the constituent parts of it, it's like you can see how this would graft very easily onto a submarine story, and I feel like they did that very well.
Yeah.
And I also appreciate that like there were some stylistic camera movements that were very reminiscent of The Undiscovered Country, which is another really good, strong pull. And it's like, that's the thing, it's okay to be referential so long as it does not completely tie your hands and does not completely inform your storytelling, and you are not reliant on it to carry emotional weight, which is something that Into Darkness did a lot. Into Darkness relied on Wrath of Khan's emotional strength to carry any kind of weight of its own. So I'll bump it up to an 8.5 out of 10. I'm quite happy with that one. Now, this was the darling of the season. Spock and Mark, episode 5, spots on an Enterprise bingo card out of 10. All three of us gave this a 10 out of 10. I know Otto wasn't as fond of it. Maybe because of just like his taste of Star Trek. I don't know his precise criticism because he was not with us on this episode.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, do we all stand by our? We've been referencing Spock and Mark every. Like it comes up every time when it comes to the humor, the characterization, the acting, the alien world building. What we like about Star Trek just keeps coming up in relation to.
Yeah, it's 10 out of 10. Like
Yeah.
It is joyous to watch. I think I've watched this episode 3 times, and
It's the easiest call on the board. Yeah. It's just it does, like you said, it just does so many things, and it's a riot. It is one of the funniest episodes of any Trek. Past, present, probably even future. And it's not there just to be gags. It has plot import. It has a lot of plot import, and the threads that are laid down in that episode are carried through the rest of the season. And that it also nails some of the characterization of the characters that you have not seen up to this point. Kids are ridiculous. He said for a second, okay?
You're good.
This is fine.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that it's a 10. It's a 10. It's an easy 10. It's still my favorite episode of the season. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's unquestioned for me. Like I've watched this multiple times since it came out, and I could watch this on repeat. I feel like at this point I could watch it until I know the entire script back and forth, and I would still
I feel like
laugh
I'm not
because
far off it.
Anson Mount's micro expressions.
Yeah.
T'Pring and Spock just echoing each other's speaking patterns and having those wonderfully Vulcan punchlines. Just Lower Decks and this have more in common than you'd think, but they are the perfect synthesis of character and humor. If every episode were like this, I would tell everyone to stop watching Better Call Saul or whatever. I would say Star Trek is the only thing you need to watch. But unfortunately, not every episode can be Spock and Mark, and that leaves us to episode 6, Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach. So, gentlemen, Nightmare Fuel Child Corpses out of 10. I gave this a 6 out of 10. My justification was that while it was an unpleasant episode in terms of the fact that there is not a happy ending, it is a grim ending, in fact. It felt like it had a point to me. It wanted to say something about the suffering of children, and we had to talk about that in our episode recap of how you can read that and about the malleability of a Trek allegory. And it has some other really good points to it, like the Uhura and Lon the relationship developing. You get some good moments with Mbenga's daughter and the first servant, where you get to see what exactly Rukia has been kind of robbed by being put into the transporter and being her life put on freeze, essentially. But it has some the downer moments, a few structural problems, and I think the biggest failing from all of us was the tease of, hey, I'm going to give you some research that might help your daughter. Oh wait, it's all going to be solved 2 episodes from now by a Nebula alien. This entire conversation did not really matter.
Yeah.
I gave it 6 out of 10. I'm happy to stand by that score. You two gentlemen went a point below and said 5 out of 10. Do you stand by your scores?
No, I do not.
Mm.
I think it needs to drop further.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Ooh.
So
getting into trash territory here. This is getting into Sub Rosa.
So here's the thing. I didn't have time to go back and rewatch all of the entire season before we did this recap. I went back and watched a couple of the episodes that I felt like I had a handle on the least, and this was one of them. This is actually the last episode that I watched before this recap, and I think we watched it. I watched it twice before we did the original review, because we all kind of watch it on our own, and then we'll watch it together before we record the recap. But on this third watch, it is just painfully slow. Once you know the mystery, once you know where this is going, there's nothing here for you. It just drags and drags and drags, and you're just like, get on with it. Let's get to the actual story, because what it's doing is, it's trying to maintain the mystery and just kind of keep things moving along one point at a time. But when that doesn't do anything for you, then it's just a slog to get through. And just like, yes, you're supposed to rate these things as, watching it one time, but as you say now, it has no bearing on the rest of the story, because it was just a red herring for Mbenga's character that doesn't really go anywhere. And on top of that, it is just a titanic bummer.
Yeah.
And so I would bump this down to a 4. And not to spoil things too much, this is now my least favorite episode of the season.
Okay.
Fair. I agree with that. I don't know if I could drop it to a 4. I feel like 4 is more like, oh, this was an objectively bad all around, technically and product. That feels like that's into the, oh shit, someone needs to improve some stuff. I'll stick to a 5 for myself, but I still think, yeah, you're right that this is the worst episode of the season. Like, especially in hindsight.
I'd probably agree.
Yeah, with the whole, like, Mbenga's daughter kind of teasers and, like, nothing really comes of it.
Well, and on top of everything else, Pike looks like an absolute rube through this whole episode. Because it's like, well, for one thing, it's one of those instant relationships that we're supposed to just buy because they say it's some long time thing, but we've never seen anything of it, so it doesn't mean anything to us.
You.
Yeah. No. So there.
See, from the perspective you're looking at me on the camera, so I thought you were telling me.
Stand down, Ortegas.
So on top of everything else, it makes the main character of your show like an idiot, and like that the audience is ahead of 20 minutes before you get to the resolution of the mystery. And so on top of any other concerns with it, which I have many, that's just the kind of the icing on the cake.
Yeah,
absolutely.
This is the code of honor of Strange New Worlds, isn't it?
Well, it still says that because it's still at least well produced and at least it has a point.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So, moving on to a also kind of divisive but for very different reasons episode. The Serene Squall, episode 7. Shakaris out of 10. I was a bit more favourable on this episode, mostly because I had no problem with the Captain Angel twist. I thought it was quite cool. I really appreciated the use of the trans metaphor and the trans sort of like idea of identity as a sort of metaphor for Spock's half human, half Vulcan struggle. I really appreciate the tease of Cyborg. I'm really hoping they stick landing on that one. I enjoyed pirate shenanigans, and I also appreciated. It cuts a bit rough that, like, just like every other ship named Enterprise, they get taken over way too easily. But I also appreciate just how they get themselves out of it, and I appreciate that Starfleet officers are not completely incompetent. They have a way of dealing with pirates. Pirates are relatively easy fare, provided you don't have a designated antagonist among them like Captain Angel. Really appreciated the Spock and Chapel relationship, which it's painful to watch, but in a good way, because it's such an interesting drama. Wonderful mirroring of dialogue between T'Pring and Chapel and Spock. You know me so well. Yeah. And I just also appreciate just like the running through line of Captain's dinners and using that to establish the themes of the episode. I was quite happy with that. 8 out of 10, I'll stick by that. Big, you gave this a 6 out of 10. Do you stand by that score?
No, I think time's been a little kinder to it in my eyes than it was when I originally watched it. I think some of the problems still persist. Going back and watching it, knowing where Angel is go ultimately, I think that helps. where I felt on it initially, because now you can appreciate the subtlety of, Angel getting the information that she needed before she makes the full turn, and then
And the
it's
use
not
of the laser trap to build confidence and trust and a rapport. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then it's not that she is becoming this thing. She's just going back to being.
Oh,
I mean,
I should say, they rather played by a female actress. So yeah.
well,
yeah, they.
but I'm not clear on that because I think that the Aspen character is meant to be non-binary. I wasn't sure if Angel is also meant to be non-binary.
Yeah, it's uncertain, but
Yeah.
I would prefer to use they, them for them because they did not object to those pronouns when they did their flip.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So yeah, that was.
No, it's a valid concern when you're dealing with identity flips. It's a completely valid concern.
I had this when we were talking about Adira in Discovery Season 3, I had the same it was my first sort of introduction to trans characters and work and things like that. Yeah. So I was often I said to people, if I get it wrong, tell me. Just come out straight up and say, you said that wrong, because we need to learn. I need to learn this kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's the thing. Having a trans boyfriend. It's like. You're all good. It's just a case of you're gonna learn, you're gonna make mistakes. It's fine. It's all a part of being human, and the fact that you care enough to try is what matters.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, but anyway, that they were just going back to being what they really were, and just casting off this disguise. So it's not like they're trying to go over the top. It's just what that character is. Yeah. And once I have had some time to kind of process that, then I appreciated that more on a rewatch. So I would put it at a 7.
Okay.
So it's definitely an improvement, and a lot of it is a lot of fun. So
yeah. It is interesting that you go from one that goes massively worse on a rewatch to one that improves upon a rewatch. It's very interesting how that's kind of structured. Idle, you gave this a 7.5 out of 10.
I'd go up to an 8. Definitely, I'm more favourable on it. Like you say, after time, once you get over the hammy twist, and then suddenly goes into haha, I'm a villain. I actually kind of enjoy the haha, I'm a villain more than the regular sort of go from Councillor Aspen to Captain Angel. I prefer Captain Angel. Having a good antagonist that can be a foil, and especially related to the whole cyborg thing, could be fun. With the T'Pring interactions as well, and like you said before, the whole spit take with Spock at the beginning, when it's we need to talk about marital relations books. It's oh, sorry, what? It's all good. So I would definitely upgrade it to full 8. I definitely just in terms would I watch it again? Do I enjoy it? Yeah, I did.
Absolutely. All right, episode 8, The Elysian Kingdom. This was Boltzmann Brains named Deborah out of 10. I gave this a 9.5 out of 10. This is my second highest rating of the season. I stand by this. It's still a joy to watch in motion. The costuming, the humor, the emotional punch at the end still lands for me. I know that you guys have your concerns about it because it's a different perspective. I'm not a father. I can't speak to that experience and how that would relate to you. I feel like if you want a deeper breakdown on your feelings about that, we had a really good conversation about this on our recap of that. But I still stand by 9.5 out of 10 for me. This is I really enjoyed this episode. I'll be watching it for years to come, I feel. Now, Idle, you gave this an 8 out of 10, partly because of your disagreement with the Rukia resolution, which you've mentioned before. Yeah. Do you stand by an 8 out of 10?
I'm half and half because I want to downgrade it to a 7.5 or a 7 because I still don't think I enjoy the Rukia, the plot line of how she just disappears and M'Benga's then just fine. But I do really enjoy Hemmer's stuff. I enjoy all of Anson Mount just playing the fool. So maybe I'll stick to an 8, because for its bad points at the end, for how they deal with M'Benga and his child that he couldn't help but neglect, but it didn't quite work. I don't think it kind of works out in the nature of Star Trek. I love a holodeck episode, so I think I'll stick to an 8.
All right, fair enough. Big, you gave this a 9 out of 10. How do you stand on that?
It's weird because the high points I think were very high. The problem that I have with it now is the fantasy trappings of the whole thing. I'm not sure how well that melds with the resolution of the Rukia story in my head. It's like I know why it happens. I understand why it all works. It's like the entity made all of this happen, and ultimately made her fine in the end. But I don't know. It like Anson Mount is having a ball, but it also seems like most of the rest of the characters are playing it pretty seriously, which I understand that's
except Christina Chong. She's gone full
into
into
that's true.
Yeah,
yes, yeah, okay. I will give you that for sure. But it's like you have to be serious for the absurdity of the situation to have its full effect. But it also just means that to me on a real rewatch, it's like it doesn't seem like it's quite as much fun as it should be for a dress-up episode, if that makes sense.
That's fair.
I might actually knock it back to an 8 in the end.
Still a strong score. I mean, yeah. Now, this was, for most of us, our lowest rated episode of season. All Those Who Wander. Goofy Hema memorial pictures out of 10. I gave this a 7 out of 10. I stand by that score. I feel like it overall holds up for me as a fan of the Aliens franchise. Like, I appreciate the homages. They do go a little bit too hard, but I feel like in terms of this is a better Aliens movie than Covenant or Prometheus were. All 3, all 4. And I appreciate the practical effects work was sublime. Like the effects on Buckley were incredible. I appreciated like the limited use of CGI on the Gorn, which looked incredible, and I thought that it was a good evolution of design from Enterprise. It was a little bit ham-fisted how they had Mbenga refer to Oriana as his daughter, but at least it felt like it was at least trying to pay service to the idea that he is missing Rukia, even though she is in a better place now. I appreciated Lon being the Ripley, Sam Kirk being the Hudson was hilarious. I appreciate where that Spock thread might go in the future, especially now that they've mentioned they want to explore his relationships and his human side more. I hope it's not confined to just anger, that he gets to develop some other emotions as well. And while I think it is an ultimate net loss for the show to lose Hema, not just because like Bruce Oreck is an incredibly talented performer, but because he was our first blind character, main character in Star Trek, that's a loss, and it's not great look to be killing off your disabled characters when they've been written so well and we missed them so much. So yeah, 7 out of 10, I'll stand by that. Idle, you gave this a 6 out of 10. Do you stand by that score?
No, I think I was just burned on Hema and the Aliens references. I probably would go up to a 7.5. It was very good. It was fun to watch, like for all the sort of the tension, what they gave it, and just like the resolution of it. And Hema did have such a good death. It was a really, like, if you're gonna send your character off, that's a good way to do it. I just wish it was in 4 seasons time. I wish I got more time with him, and that's the ultimate like heartbreak really, because like after Elysian Kingdom and having all the fun of him doing like his hammy acting and that, and just his arrogance, he has what like a charm of arrogance, which is, you know, I don't know what the word is, like a personable arrogance,
pomposity.
Like, yeah, I kind of, but in a good way. Like you kind of wanna, like, you wanna know that
force of personality.
Yeah. You kind of want to know him more. Like you can tell he's being a bit of a dick, but he knows it, and he knows he's doing it for the likes. You know. So
it's the charm of supreme confidence in your ability.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. couldn't have said it better myself, and I didn't. But yeah, and we just wanted more. We wanted more from Hemmer because of that, and he had such a good death. He had a like the best way you could have sent him out, better than Yar. In hindsight, and that's the
better than Jadzia. That's the better than Trip.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the parallels. So yeah, I'm harsh. What did I say? I'd upgrade to an 8. 8.5.
You said you gave it a 6. You said you'd upgrade to a 7.5, but if you want to go higher,
7.5 sounds right. 7.5 sounds right. It's all
okay.
It hurts. It hurts.
Now, Big, you disliked this most on first watch. Like you had a higher score for Lift Us Up Where Suffering Cannot Reach. You gave it a 4 out of 10. Do you stand by that score?
Okay, so I still feel largely the way I felt when we did the rewatch. So it still hews so closely to its influences to be distracting. It is, it's just very, very clear what they were trying to do. And it, in some ways, it's like I kind of am looking directly at the writer of the episode. And I thought it was going to affect me more on Memento Mori because he was a co-writer. Davey Perez was a co-writer on Memento Mori also. So I was thinking that, this whole Gorn thread was basically his idea. And it still feels like to me, because we haven't seen what's going to happen from here with the Gorn, that all of it was just set up to make a Goofy Aliens ripoff. It's like that was his end game for this whole thread of things. I mean, there are pluses, like depending on what they do with Spock, that could be a thing that's relevant and has ongoing impact. But yeah, it just doesn't hit me. It doesn't hit me.
That's fair.
And that is saying something. It's like I loved the Alien movie. Predator is one of my favorite action movies of all time. But it's just, if I wanted to see those, I would just go watch those. I don't need to see Star Trek's take on it.
Yeah, that's fair.
But all that being said, it still moves. Like there's never a dull moment in this episode. Like it, and that is much more than you can say for Lift Us Up Where Suffering Cannot Reach.
Yeah.
It is, so by just that token alone, I will bump it up to a 5. And save it
so generous
from the yes. Well,
I mean, that's fair. It's a good reason.
It's like I feel the way that I feel about it, but that other episode is work.
Yeah.
And it's so I need the scores to reflect that.
That's absolutely fair. All right, and now the finale. Now, A Quality of Mercy. This was Vulcan Deaths by Democracy. I said Deaths by Democracy because it was meant to be Vulcan, like Pike's command star essentially got Spock killed here. I feel like I should probably modify that to Vulcan Deaths by Diplomacy, but same difference. All of us gave this a 9 out of 10. And even though he's not here, I have to speak up for Automaton. He's a very dear friend of mine. I really wanted him to like Strange New Worlds and to get the same enjoyment that, say, like Idle and I get out of Discovery, because it's like for people who want that episodic experience, it's been a bit of a dry well. Like Lower Decks has kind of hit it. Picard has been mixed at best. Strange New Worlds has hit it out of the park for most of them, and I was like, I really hope this sticks the landing for him. Automaton said this was catapulted straight into one of his all-time top 3 episodes of Star Trek.
It's crazy.
That is incredible praise. Yeah, I was not expecting that at all. Like that is such glowing praise, and I respect that man's opinion like nobody's business. All 3 of us gave this a 9 out of 10. Gentlemen, do you stand by your scores?
Well, sure. Yeah.
I also would stand by my 9 out of 10. I feel like this is such a well-crafted episode in terms of using completely stealing another episode, but then completely recontextualizing it. Like taking Perk's arguable finest hour, one of his finest hours, and then using it to paint one of Pike's most ignoble failures. And he failed by trying to be noble. And that's such a tightrope to walk in terms of the balancing of making your character seem competent, which, the big you pointed out that was a failing of Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach, but making it feel like he's not an idiot for trying this. It's like Kirk has that moment when it's like, you tried for something better, and I'm sorry it didn't work out. And that's a really Star Trek ethos, and I feel like that kind of elevates this beyond just a retread of another episode, is that it completely recontextualizes it, and I feel like that's why it works.
I'll stick to a 9.
And it's
sorry, go on.
Oh, good. Well, I was just gonna say, like, the normal Star Trek thing to do in an episode like that is, do something like Trials and Tribulations or something, where you actually go back to the actual episode and you stick people in it, or kind of a Back to the Future or Quantum Leap kind of thing, where it's like you're sticking yourself in the original text. This is actually just it's a more novel way to do it, actually seeing an alternate thing of a universe we've already seen. And yes, absolutely, I'm good with the 9 out of 10. I mean, there are a few just little quibbles there. We still don't know what the Paul Wesley Kirk is ultimately going to be, and as an introduction, there are hits and misses in that portrayal of Kirk, like the stuff like him bringing in the fleet of mining ships, like that's an absolute hit. That is a total Kirk move, and that is the most, like, when he comes back on the screen with the fleet, that's like, okay, yes, now we have Kirk. But also there's just some moments where
there was a conversation he has with Pike. Like, I wasn't entirely sold. Even with that, I wasn't entirely sold on Paul Wesley's Kirk until he had a conversation with Pike, when I thought, like, actually no, this is not movie era Kirk, not Pine era Kirk. What people think Kirk is, this is TOS Kirk talking to Pike. This feels very much like the very military man, not what people think of him as, what people, like Sam Kirk says, like, oh, he's very rash, he's very sort of breaks the rules. No, this sounds more like Kirk that is like pulling Pike up on his shit, and sort of like, very much addressing the problems with his command, and sort of sounds very much like Kirk would be in TOS, who is a very military man, very kind of by the book, or very by the book, very sort of I said that in the fucking episode 10 recap as well, didn't I? Sorry to step on your toes, Big, but please carry on.
Oh, no, I had pretty much finished what I wanted to say. So
that bit where he's like, if you hesitate and you don't put everything you can into the punch, they're gonna feel it.
That was the most Kirk he's been.
Yeah. I feel like we're gonna have to give it a bit of time to marinate, and maybe I could even see my score on this going back in retroactively if we see his season 2 Kirk, and it's notably different and more like the TOS Kirk, because there are differences. There's quite the butterfly effect of changing one thing and suddenly a million different things change.
I mean, it's a bit of the Naked Now kind of problem. It's like where you have different versions of the characters that you've only known for one episode. It's like, you don't have enough context to really judge it. It's still not a good episode, even after you have the context, but still.
But the thing is, like, in Star Trek 09, they go, oh, Sulu's into fencing just because he was in the Naked Now after all those drugs injected into his system. Like, they made that the defining characteristic, even though it's not referenced anywhere else. But,
So... A few ups and downs up there.
What did I give it? What did I give this episode?
We all gave it.
We all gave it a 9. I might go up to 9.5.
Really?
I might.
Even with your concerns about Paul Wesley.
I've warmed. Do you know what? After I watched it first time, I went, oh, I'm not sure. Second time I watched it, I went, maybe. And I think I could see if, and it was since comments have been behind the scenes of them saying, like, yeah, this is an alternate reality Kirk, who has not met Spock, who serves as captain of the Farragut, whose La'an is their first officer. I could see that, and there was enough elements of Kirk in, like, the speech he made to Pike, about saying, like, you're doing the wrong thing, that made me think, okay, maybe there is something there. So maybe that score could be a 9.5 depending on how Paul Wesley plays a Kirk. Not that we're expecting him to do a Shatner or a Pine. I feel Pine is more a Kirk than Paul Wesley is, through sheer force of personality, if anything. But yeah, I for
Up to
overall,
this
apart from the Kirk stuff, the rest of the episode was goddamn stunning. Like taking the shock of making a balance of terror remake after all these years is just a point of genius, and doing it this way is what no one expected, and just great to watch as a Trek fan. If you are not a Trek fan, you watch this the first time, you'll be like, well, why is this important? I'm like, no, it's great. It's
actually the most important thing in the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I also feel like I have to give it props. It's also a really good tone setter for season 2, where you get your teasers of what Lon will be doing. You get your teasers of Kirk, who's going to be a bigger part of season 2. You get the final reveal with Una. I feel like I have a good grasp on what season 2 is going to be about.
I could see Captain Lon. Like, she's been sort of set up, and like she has a personal development journey going on that sort of sets her up for command, with her interactions with Pike, how to deal with people. Like, she's very upfrontish, but then with Uhura and other members of the cast, she's learning different. It's almost the Data equivalent, isn't it? She's learning how to be a human being after all, and then taking command.
Yeah.
But I could definitely see a Captain La'an in the future as a plot point.
That was another little weird thread that kind of got left. Was the Memento Mori, where she has the image of her brother kind of being the weird ghost on the shoulder that she would see. I mean, I guess maybe the implication is that the mind meld with Spock makes that go away to where she kind of resolves it, but I expected that to come back somehow, and it just...
Well, she is also regularly going to therapy, which is something I also appreciate, that, like, after so many years of I'm going to get my mental health work done by my brother at a vineyard, someone's actually going to see a fucking professional and getting their head sorted out.
Yeah.
Like,
she hates it, but she's doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I wouldn't mind seeing that come back in, because it's like, since that we haven't had a true Lon viewpoint episode. Like, episode 9, you get like a good mix of her and Uhura, but it's not from her explicit. You are seeing from her eyes. So maybe that'll come back, and we'll see that sort of that PTSD like resurface. I'd be interested to see how that comes, because we don't actually have a confirmation on how much, if at all, the Gorn are going to feature in season 2. So we'll have to see how that works out. Yeah. That being said, season 1, what a fucking triumph! What a absolute success!
Yeah. Everything we hoped it would be. Like, I don't know why I said. I want to say, like, I didn't expect it to be, because
no, I did. I mean, I didn't. I was pretty nervous watching episode 1. I was like, because nothing in modern Trek has really. It's been stuff that I've found things to appreciate in it, and that's even with something like Picard that I had a lot of expectation for, and I really was going in predisposed to like it, and nothing has really hit me in that way, where it was just like total complete buy-in enjoyment. So I kind of came into Strange New Worlds feeling that same kind of trepidation, and almost from moment 1, it was just like, okay, let's go. We're here. This is it. So, yeah.
So I was a little bit worried, mostly because of the stuff like revealing Paul Wesley Kirk before your episode's even out. Like, that was... I'm still not sure about the optics on that, although I feel like it has worked out in line of baiting us with the Sam Kirk reveal, and then like having him in episode 10 if you didn't pay attention to the opening credits. And the trailer, I was like, this is okay, but then it really is a case of modern trailers can be just so deceptive as to the actual overall quality of the product, because I loved almost every episode of the season, almost every episode, or at least found something to enjoy and appreciate. There are some I probably won't rewatch, episode 6, episode 9 I might not, episode 7, pretty good, but I don't know if I feel the overall need to. Maybe if I'm just doing a season 1 rewatch.
I'm
But
just
there
not
are
going to
some
watch
episodes
episode
here-
9 just to pretend that Hemmer never died, and he just went off to his own home. He went back to Einar and Andoria, and he's happy. He's happy there.
Yeah. But yeah, no, like there are episodes in this thing I could see becoming my favorite episodes of Star Trek ever, and like Discovery has touched me in ways that like there are some episodes in there that I would say are my favorite episodes of Star Trek, like Magic to Sailors Men to Go Mad,
So good.
If Memory Serves, Forget Me Not. I'm sure season 4 will knock my socks off as well. I'm hoping
You
so.
haven't watched it, have you?
I haven't seen season 4. We're hoping to do a season a
will.
review
That's the next
recap
thing.
like this. I would like to do that, but I think we're kind of on the verge of wrapping up. But what I want to leave us on is arguably what was the genesis for this entire season, and that was Pike's big moment of heroism in season 2 of Discovery, where he picks up that time crystal, he sees his future, and then he says to himself, "You're a Starfleet captain. You believe in service, sacrifice, compassion, and love. No, I'm not going to abandon things that made me what I am because of a future that contains an ending I hadn't foreseen for myself."
Yeah.
And those are the words that launch a series. Frankly, that is a man I can believe and then be inspired by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Season 2 when?
Yeah, come on, bring it on. I think we've summarised it absolutely fantastically. And we're going to be doing Discovery season 4 soon. I'm excited about this. I've been rewatching season 3 in anticipation because I've only watched it through the once. And Big, you're not the biggest Discovery fan, so I'm going to be allegedly anyway.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
is
I still haven't. I've only made it through about like maybe 4 or 5 episodes of season 2, so
Yeah.
I've got a long way to go to catch up to that point. I actually liked season 1 quite a bit. I mean, I had some problems with it, but
Yeah.
No, that's fair.
And yeah, I'm coming into it with hope and optimism that I'm going to enjoy it. So
no, fine.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, it'll be interesting to have like the counterpoint as well, because like me and Stars we're big Discovery fans, aren't we? Like, you know, that can't be helped. And
We'll wait on that train.
yeah, we will. And I would say I'm rewatching season 3 in anticipation for us reviewing season 4. So I'm hopeful. I enjoyed season 4 quite a lot. So like we'll be doing that soon. At some point late August. So final scores, like seasons, like the first season of a Star Trek show. Like, this is the reason we've done this review show, is because we were so impressed by the pilot episode when we need to review this. All of us pretty much just went, can we get on and talk about this? Because we need to. So like, how hopeful of season 2 are we?
I have high expectations.
Yeah.
But this writing staff so far has shown me that I have reason to have those expectations.
Henry Alonso Myers wrote the finale, he wrote Spock Amok, and he wrote Children of the Comet. So if he's staying on, which I assume he's staying on. Yeah, bangers.
Everyone a banger.
Absolutely. If he's staying on, I'm there. Like,
I used to work for Charmed.
yeah. People grow and they learn.
Yeah.
They get the basic jobs to get their craft in. They go, I'm secretly a Star Trek fan all along. I'm going to get that dream job. And I think he's hit the end of his rainbow because, like, he's there.
And what a win for these guys. Like, honestly, just getting to... This was the #1 streaming service above, like, Obi-Wan Kenobi for a good while. That's saying something.
Yeah.
That's a pop culture juggernaut in its own right.
If you can beat Star Wars, you're there. If you can beat a Disney show, you're there.
So beloved.
You know what? This will tell you all you need to know both about me and about this. I watched this every week. I have still not seen the last episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh, wow.
I've watched all the rest of them, and I just...
Oh, actually, the last episode's the best one.
Yeah, and I'm aware of this, and I do want to see it. But it's just like, I made time for this. And it's... I don't have a lot of time to watch television in general, but the quality of this and being able to come and talk about it with you guys just really...
It's because you're on the right side of the fandom. You're on the Star Trek side, and we love you for it.
Yeah. So, this is the good stuff.
Yeah.
and enjoy it.
Into the vein.
Yeah.
It isn't always this good.
We've
So
all
enjoy it while it's
been
great.
through the, coming out of DS9 onto sort of finishing up Voyager, and then we've all been through the Enterprise era a bit like, okay, this is getting tired, this is getting stale, as much as we enjoyed it, and then we've all been through the kind of the dark period when there was nothing until Star Trek 09 and kind of going, okay, they're making it Hollywood, they're trying to do a thing, and then Discovery came out, and for all the mixed reviews, we kind of had there was a little bit of an uphill fight for those that enjoyed it, and a little bit of a kind of trepidation for those that didn't, kind of thinking like, oh, what are they going to do, something that I like? And then Strange New Worlds has just been the thing that made everyone like it. So this is everyone's just sort of been on this sort of upward rush of just like, Trek's so good. But anyway, okay, thank you everyone for watching. We will be back soon for our next show, whatever that will be. Keep an eye on the YouTube channel. We'll be doing Discovery Watches very soon. Live long and prosper, and from ourselves, ta-ra.